Good afternoon and welcome to the February 7th meeting of Council. The City of Parksville recognizes the people of the Coast Salish Nations and their traditional territory upon which we gather with gratitude. A couple of quick announcements here. As mayor and in support of the Parksville and District Chamber of Commerce, I have proclaimed February 14th to February 20th as Chamber of the Commerce Week in the City of Parksville. The Parksville Chamber of Commerce is dedicated to strengthening the city's business community and helping our community to thrive. The Chamber network and the support provided by the Parksville Chamber is more important than ever as our businesses continue to navigate the extraordinary circumstances and difficult challenges of operating during this pandemic. The Parksville Chamber, as an integral part of our community, continues to demonstrate the good work that they do for Parksville's businesses. I'm going to start with the consent agenda. And before we start, I would like to add an item for council's consideration under correspondence. It pertains to the council meeting scheduled for this Friday, February the 11th, with representatives from the Ministry of Health and Island Health. The plan is for the deputy ministers to meet with us to discuss the province's harm reduction program and distribution of needles in our community. I need council's direction on the format of this meeting. The province has indicated that they thought this would be a private meeting with council, but I believe council was clear in advising the province that we wanted a public meeting where the community members could observe the discussion and gain an understanding of the province's approach and hear about potential solutions. We have the option to start the discussion in an informal workshop setting. Stop that for a second. We have an option to either stop the discussions in an informal workshop setting without the public attending, or if the council is amenable to that, and if the council is amenable to that, I would hope that we could rise and report to share the information with our community at a later date. The other option, which I believe I'm leaning towards, is to insist that this continue as an open public discussion, as we believe the minister has committed to and agreed to all along. I need your input in how we would proceed with this. So first off, I need a mover and a seconder for the agendas and the change to the agenda, if you don't mind. So I need somebody to move by Councillor Patterson, seconded by Councillor Fraz. All those in favor for all of them? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. So we'll go back to that discussion a little bit when we get to the correspondence. But first off, we have a presentation by Sergeant Worth. Come on up, sir. Oceanside's RCMP quarterly report. You need to push the button right beside the little head character on the board. There you go.
Okay, thanks. Good afternoon, Your Worship and Council. My name is Sergeant Shane Worth. I'm with the Oceanside RCMP. I'm here to present Q3 update for our annual performance plan, as well as some year-end statistics for the city. The annual performance plan runs on a fiscal year as opposed to an annual year for the crime stats. So I'll just present those to you. I'm going to keep it in the same format as now Inspector Rose had them from last quarter, so everybody knows where we're at. There we go. So it's going to be detachment update, our Q3 update for our annual performance plan, overall crime statistics for 2021, and just our prisoner count. So the Oceanside detachment has 38 regular members, which are police officers, all our positions are currently staffed except for the detachment commander position, which has been identified as Staff Sergeant Travis DeCoyne. He'll be starting on March 14th. And we've had 2 transfers come into the detachment. One just started yesterday, a constable from Prince Rupert, and we have 1 more coming in April. So we're fully staffed on the officer front. Our civilian staff, we have 10 civilian staff. All positions are staffed except for the 1 office manager position, which is currently being posted to be filled by public service. It's a federal employee, public service employee. Our total calls for service, sorry, that just shows there that we have 6 guards, 2 victim services people in our office, as well as restorative justice. You can see from the slide there that our total calls for service for the whole detachment, it is 0.8% increase over 2021. So not very significant update there in terms of year over year. So the annual performance plan, I believe, was reviewed last quarter, the same format as now Inspector Rose. So the 4 areas where we are concentrating on are enhanced road safety, crime reduction, community relations, and community partnerships. So under enhanced road safety, we had 271 traffic contacts, which means a ticket, warning. We had 95 hours in school zones, which is a big increase over last quarter, considering school was back in session. 7 immediate roadside prohibitions and 1 criminal code impaired driving investigation. There are 150 crashes reported to the detachment, and we had 1 fatal crash last quarter, which was the crash up on Highway 4A across from Spunkies. 25 patrols to the Qualcomm First Nation, almost 100 foot patrols, and the school visits and contacts were increased as school is back in session. We are monitoring 11 people who are currently on release from the court. That includes conducting curfew checks and address compliance checks with them. We had 1 significant drug investigation last quarter, which involved drug trafficking and a large seizure of drugs and some weapons. We had 120 referrals to victim services, 5 referrals to restorative justice, and 17 interagency meetings with our service providers such as the MCFD and mental health and VHA. And there were 6 proactive mental health referrals. Just going to get to the statistics here this is just a snapshot sort of the major crime types in Parks. So it's Parksville, RDN, and Qualicum Beach. So the red is an increase, green is a decrease, and yellow is even. So we've had a decrease everywhere except for assaults, which are up by 3 cases over last year. So that's not very significant. The brackets there, we had a total of 85 assaults reported in Parksville last year. In brackets is the, if it was an intimate partner violence assault. So there was 16 reported to us last year. A slight increase in the break and enter to residences. I know now Inspector Rose spoke about that last quarter, but it's not far off the 2019 number. We're talking 5 more over the course of a whole year. Theft motor vehicles, theft from motor vehicles, theft unders, shopliftings, mischiefs, cause disturbances, drugs have all gone down this last year in the year 2021. The impaired driving investigations were even. Now, the next couple ones are the immediate roadside prohibitions for failing to refuse a breath test and for failing the roadside test. Now, the first one shows that's down. I think that just means our enforcement's down on that one. I don't think people are, I think there's the impaired driving is still out there. It's just that happened to be down there, at least in Parksville. And they're up on the refusals in Parksville. But if you look over at the RDN, they're they're up quite a bit in the RDN. So our enforcement sort of sometimes takes us into the RDN area for those types of calls because of the highway and where the traffic is. Crashes were down, and the traffic offenses again is a bit, the stat there is a bit, I don't want to say confusing, but they're up, but that includes reports to us about a tailgater or someone with a cell phone in their hand, whether we were able to issue a ticket or not. So it's just sort of indicative of sort of what types of calls we get in terms of that traffic. One there, and our mental health act files are down as well in Parksville, and the bracket there for we had a total of 167 mental health related calls in Parksville in 2021. In the brackets it means the person was emotionally disturbed is how it's the statistics captured, which means they were either apprehended or subject of a mental health act warrant or something to do with an actual authorization to apprehend them. And just the prisoner count, we're down. So this is just for last quarter. The last slide was for the year for stats, for calls for service and some crime types. And for prisoner counts, we're at 21 prisoners for last quarter that were held in city cells for the city of Parksville. And that's down from 2020, fiscal 2020-21 for that quarter. And that's where we're at for quarter three on our annual performance plan, which is, like I said, a fiscal year, and the year-end stats for 2021 for the city.
Thank you, Sergeant Worth. Always interesting to see those numbers. Does anybody have any questions for Sergeant? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you very much for that presentation. Maybe an obvious question, but for me, I'm just wondering when you refer people to restorative justice in the mental health, what happens then?
Sure. So for restorative justice, what we have a restorative justice worker in our office who works 20 hours a week in our office, and I can tell you that she is funded by the Aerosmith Community Justice Society. So, for example, we've had a couple. I know a couple files recently where at least one. I don't want to say too much about it to identify the people, but say some youths were damaging some property or something like that, and there was an opportunity to release them on court documents to attend for court. Well, sometimes that might not be the most appropriate or most efficient use of the court, so we would refer them to refer the file to restorative justice, and the restorative justice would speak to the complainant or victim and figure out an alternative response for these people who committed the mischief, whether it would be to go back and repair the damage they'd made, an apology letter, things like that. We've also had an instance, for example, where young people who have no contact with the police, maybe they went out to the bush and had a firearm with them and were shooting cans or something like that. And, not doing nothing violent, anything like that. And we happen to get involved with them, and maybe the restorative justice piece to that, instead of refer them to court, would be to go take their firearms license and make sure that they're licensed and understand gun safety. In terms of the mental health, if we do apprehend somebody, we have to, if we're called to something where we believe that whether an information we received or observation of our own, that a person is suffering from a mental health crisis or mental health incident, and they're a danger to themselves or others, the police must apprehend that person under Section 28 of the Mental Health Act. And if we have apprehended somebody, we must deliver them to a physician. So in practice, that means apprehending them, physically apprehending them, and transporting them to Nanaimo Hospital. where they would be assessed by the psychiatric emergency services or section. It's called the PES anyway at Nanaimo Hospital. And from there, we would, the health system would take over.
Councillor Chandler. Oh, Councillor Chandler, could you push your button?
Sorry about that. Start again. Thank you through your worship. Thank you, Sergeant Worth, for coming in and sharing this info today. It's quite encouraging to see some of the stats that are looking like they're trending down, which is great. Especially with everything that's going on in the world today, it just seems like there's a lot more disarray out there and a lot more craziness happening. But it's nice to see some of those things are in check. Wondered if through the CAO, if we'd be able to get your approval to get those numbers in a hard copy format that we could just have in our office would be appreciated. Would that be okay? Okay, cool.
Yeah, I think the slide can be shared.
That would be wonderful. Yeah, it's just good to look back on that because that's a 3-year trending, so you can sort of see what's going on. We often get asked by citizens, for different things, and of course, we're not going to share information that hasn't just been shared on the screen here. But there's always the concern that there's a lot more break and enters than are actually happening, and so we can almost act as a little bit of a cheerleader for the police department here to be able to say, honestly, it's not really as bad or it's trending down and that kind of thing. So we do get a lot of that. So, or I do at least. So, secondly, just a follow up through your worship. When you're taking the prisoners down to Nanaimo, it can be quite a long trek. I mean, obviously you're going from Bowser, let's say, all the way to Nanaimo. And are you with that prisoner the entire time, or does security take over that prisoner when you're there?
So from the time we apprehend the person until we get to Nanaimo Hospital and until a physician has made an assessment of the person, we do have to stay with them. Having worked in Nanaimo, I can tell you that the PES is extremely efficient. They are highly aware of the time constraints that we have and the calls for service we have, and they're very good about getting us back on the road as fast as we can. It's the best system I've seen in terms of apprehending somebody, delivering them to the appropriate health authority, and then us getting back to doing, what we need to do and go get our calls for service. So.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, I was actually just probably 4 years ago, was on a ride along when they were doing ride alongs, and that exact thing happened. And I think there was 3 members that all had to go in together. So it really tied up a lot of resources, but they were there for a good couple hours. So it was, I'm just curious if that's changed and because it was a little bit of a cluster there at that point and it took a long time. So, but that's great to hear. Thank you.
Thank you. Through the mayor to their delegation, Sergeant Worth. I'm wondering if you can speak to gang activity in the region. I hear about it throughout the community that there is gang activity, but I don't see anything through your reports. And I'd just like to hear it straight from the RCMP, if there is any, to what extent it might go to, and also in regards to human trafficking, if that's an issue that you see through our region. We've had delegations come to us before speaking to the severity of human trafficking in BC, but nothing to suggest particularly it's happening here. So if you can maybe speak to those 2 things of gang activity and human trafficking in our region.
So it would be naive of us to say that there was no gang activity in any community. There are going to be, some people who are traveling through or vacationing here, recreating here. But in terms of, the types of gang situations that we see in the Lower Mainland or in other centers, we don't have that. That's not here. It's not something that our detachment is dealing with, daily. That's all I can say to that question in terms of overt street gangs or targeted shootings or things that we see on TV from Lower Mainland. So that's not something that's happening here. In terms of the human trafficking, frontline policing, the sort of types of policing we're doing, we are not seeing that at all here in terms of being reported to us. It'd be naive for me to say that nothing's happening here in terms of human trafficking or gangs, but nothing is being reported to us at the front line about those two things.
Great, thank you. That's encouraging to hear.
We really appreciate the time and effort that you guys all put in on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council.
I need a mover and a seconder to receive the report. Councillor Wilson, Councillor Patterson, all those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Delegations. Delegation from Broombusters, Invasive Plant Society. Time and effort that you guys all put in on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council.
Oh, there we are. Need a mover and a seconder to receive the report. Councillor Wilson, Councillor Patterson, all those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Delegations. Delegation from Broombusters, Invasive Plant Society. Time and effort that you guys all put in on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay, am I on?
Hold on for just a second. We're going to try to figure out what's making noise here for us. So
Okay.
you have your live stream on? Delegation from Broombusters, Invasive Plant Society. I'm hearing. Oh,
Okay, am I on?
no, we're still live streaming from your side.
We're going to try to figure out what's
Go
making
ahead,
noise here.
explain to her what you.
Hi, Joanne. You just need to turn off the live stream that you're watching.
I'm hearing.
So you'll probably just have to stop sharing your screen and then turn off the internet that you're live streaming on.
Okay, I turned it off.
Okay, now you can share your screen again.
Okay. Okay, can you hear me? Or,
You're very quiet. Are you able to get closer to your microphone?
I can get a little closer. Okay, can you hear me now?
I'll turn up on our end as well.
Okay, please go ahead.
Okay. Well, good afternoon, Mayor Main and councillors. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm going to move pretty quickly through the information about Scotch Broom because most of you are familiar with it, and get to the issue of the day, which primarily is urban interface fires related to Scotch Broom. Broombusters have been at work, volunteers here at work since 2007. This is a photo of the Broomfest of 2017. Even with the pandemic, the numbers of volunteers are growing. In 2020, 400 volunteers cut broom over 5,000 hours. And in 2021, that number increased to 600 volunteers cutting broom over 7,000 hours. Parksville has about 30 active Broombusters, and we are asking the city for support again by collecting the cut broom, and thank you for your support for the past 15 years. What's wrong with Scotch Broom? It's an alien invasive plant, spreads rapidly, forms dense thickets, crowds out native plants, prevents forest regrowth. Dramatic loss of diversity, highly flammable, toxic to grazing animals and wildlife, and takes over farm, forest, and parkland. How bad does it get? Really bad. Broom has taken over farm and forest land all over the world. These are photos from New Zealand, but as our forests disappear, this could happen here. Broom spreads rapidly. A single plant can produce 18,000 seeds, viable for 20 to 40 or more years in the soil. And broom grows huge quickly, and it strangles native species. I mean, look at the size of that. It's a woody weed, but it is a weed. So 15 years, we've come a long way in Parksville. I don't know how many of you remember, but Island Highway was lined with broom, and the train station was covered with broom, and all the interchanges. These are photos from different times, 2012, the end of Island Highway as it turns into K Road. This is one of the many interchange cuts. And it's so easy to forget what the roads look like. All the steep banks on the sides of the interchanges and between the two interchanges were covered with broom. So we're thankful to the Parksville volunteers. And if you remember the yellow field covered with gorse, it will take years to permanently eradicate gorse in Parksville, but the situation is much better. And we want to thank Public Works and whoever has been working on that. Now the bad news. Climate change is bringing us hotter, drier, longer summers. So this is what we see if we look at broom right now. This is winter broom, and this happens to be near Parksville on the Coombs-Parksville Trail. This is what we'll see in the spring. And unfortunately, we'll see more of the summer broom, which is dry and flammable. Broom has high oil content and naturally occurring dead branches, and that's what makes it so flammable. So to quote Terry Peters, the fire chief of Powell River, Scotch broom, you can't see the fire truck besides this, but this is a huge fire. Scotch broom is a volatile flash fuel. It will increase a wildfire's fuel load, escalate the fire's intensity, compromise fire situations, and make fires more difficult to fight. And we're getting stories coming in from California where it's the case, because broom is also rampant there. So here's another quote by Terry Peters. He says, I head up the local chapter of Broombusters in Powell River, not only for the invasive properties of Scotch broom, but more so because broom is a significant threat as a fire hazard for urban interface fires within our region. We are learning lots of new terminology because of climate change, like heat domes, atmospheric rivers, and now urban interface fires. Okay, it's important that we take notice of the fire in Boulder County, Colorado, that burned 1,000 homes. That was an urban interface fire. So was the fire that destroyed Lytton. We know that prolonged drought and heat by climate change can have disastrous consequences even for urban areas. Parksville has little broom left in the city, and we will continue to go after it. But the situation for urban interface fires is not good and is getting worse. Broombuster volunteers have made great progress, but for reasons beyond our control, there is an increasing and massive amount of broom growing just outside of Parksville boundaries. We'll look again at this location that you all are familiar with. The broom between the forest between Spunky's and the interchange was cut down. In the spring of 2020, volunteers tried to stop the broom seeds from getting onto the land, but the seeds were already there, because by the fall of 2020, you can see the broom is already coming up. And then in 2 growing seasons, like if you look at this now, if you go there and you look at it, that's how big the broom is, and that's 2 growing seasons. It hasn't even started growing yet this year. That's how quickly broom gets rooted, and that's, you know, that's the danger of it. Looking at the Wayscale area, this is an old photo, and Broombusters were so excited because we had cleared so much of the broom here, and grass was growing and the broom was gone. I mean, not completely, but a lot of it was gone. And then this forest was cut down. This was too, but we're not as worried about that as we are about this, because here the broom seeds are already inside this area. Will this private landowner keep the broom from taking over? I don't know. But it looks like it's going to be another broom field on the way to Top Bridge. Another danger for Parksville area is the BC Hydro power lines. Broom on the BC Hydro transmission lines creates an easy path for fire to travel across the island. When broom is on the power line areas, it spreads quickly into private lands, farms, clear-cut areas, and highways. BC Hydro does nothing to control it because they like the broom, because it keeps trees from growing, which is exactly the same reason why we don't like it. But were a fire to hit the broom, It would be like pouring kerosene on it and an open highway of broom from Nile Creek to here and beyond farther south. So Broombusters have taken on an impossible task, and we know that, but we are succeeding in the towns. But the problem created by broom spreading on private land, cleared forest land, and under power lines are beyond us. Nevertheless, they are critically important. As you can imagine, after we had put so much love, care, and sweat into the Parksville area, this is heartbreaking for Broombuster volunteers. This again is another picture of the just outside the interchange. Residents and tourists don't like seeing clear cuts and land taken over by invasive plants. And fields of broom are like broken windows on abandoned buildings, signs of indifference and neglect. But we are not indifferent, and we know that you are not indifferent. But what can we do? It's beyond the role of Broombusters to do anything. It's also beyond the scope of the single council of Parksville. But it's not beyond the rights and powers of the collective of councils and governing bodies of Vancouver Island and BC. Broombusters was asked to help clear the broom on a farm close to Parksville, one of the private properties of a foreign investor who had bought up thousands of hectares of Canada for his portfolio. We declined because the broom had already spread too widely. So just wondering, why are foreign investors allowed to buy up so much land in Canada? Our children will need these forests and farms in healthy condition. And with invasive plants, you can't go back in time and fix things. At best, the damage will take many, many decades to repair. The spread of Scotch broom is a problem that must be addressed. And so this single innocent looking plant leads to this, and the hydro lines leads to this. So Broombusters will be out again all over, welcoming you to take part. We will cut the broom when it's in bloom. Our purpose is for the sake of farms, forests, and the future for our children and future generations. So thank you.
Thank you very much. It looks like a never-ending battle. Every time we see this, it seems to get just a little bit worse each year. I mean, it's nice to say that we've got it under control, or you have it under control in the city of Parksville, but as you suggest, the surrounding areas are certainly a concern. So thank you for that, and I will open it up for questions. Any questions? Councillor Patterson, Councillor.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I have a question for you to our CAO at this point. Do we have an existing contract for 2022 for the city to collect cut broom in the surrounding areas in Parksville?
If I may, Your Worship.
You may.
No, we've done it through our own staff. And so we usually get council direction to continue that, and it's an in-kind support that we provide.
Just if I can just interject, because I'd written the same question down here as well. And that just as, do we need a resolution then for a pickup with the city?
If I may, yes, that helps us prioritize it on the workload. And I know that our staff are very happy to do it, and they work very well with the group. So I think
Let's
would be
bring that
appreciated.
resolution up at the end of the conversation, and then we can go from there. Okay. Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thanks, Joanne, for your presentation again. We've seen a few of them, and I was glad to see you still on task. A question for you, if I may. City of Parksville has relatively few areas that have actually been clear cut and haven't been developed yet, but we have a few. And so I'm wondering with what you're saying, because I saw the slide of that you showed earlier where the area had been clear cut and probably in preparation for development, and yet it's laying fallow, to say, except for the broom that will take over. Would it help to have some kind of regulations in place that if a developer was to actually clear cut an area in anticipation of development, which is certainly his right, would it be not good to have a regulation to say that if that area has been clear cut, taking the trees down, thereby letting the broom take over, having a ruling in place that if they do choose to clear cut it before, that they are responsible for clearing any invasive plants on that land up until the development starts taking construction. It's just something like that. As I say, Parksville only has a few. I know of where they are, but I'm thinking that, and for whatever reason, sometimes developments are changed or delayed, and or going back on the market to be resold. That happens quite a bit. But you know, that's something Parksville could do in the city, anyways, to help. That it would be just, you know, a small regulation, but we also have RDN representation at this table as well that would be effective in those areas outside. Maybe to suggest it to the other area directors would be helpful. I just, it's so sad to see the trees come down and then nothing happens on that land for a few years, but in the meantime, it becomes a breeding ground for the broom. And so it just makes your problem that much more difficult. So would that be helpful to try and
that would be so amazingly helpful. And even though, like you said, Parksville doesn't have a lot of situations that will arise like that, Parksville has been a leader, for example, in having a bylaw against Scotch broom. And then when you tell other municipalities, oh, Parksville has a bylaw, which was passed in 2012, then they copy, you know. So if Parksville were to have such a proposition or regulation, then it would be duplicated in other areas. And of course, ultimately in the regional districts is where we probably need it the most. But what we had always hoped for is that the trees cannot be removed until just before development, or if they are removed, that the land is cared for so that it could be passed in good condition onto another owner or future generations. So yes, thank you.
Yeah, good point, Joanne. Thank you very much. And follow up, I think our CAO was waving that we may have regulation in place for broom. If certainly.
Yeah, if I may, Your Worship, yes, we have a property maintenance bylaw that specifically references broom and noxious weeds and the requirement of people to maintain their properties and not permit that to happen. And we do work with several property owners on a regular basis on that clause. The other thing I would mention perhaps around the tree issue is we do have a tree management bylaw, but it really only provides protection for significant trees, so trees over a certain size. So it's very challenging for cities. We don't have as much authority as people would think to prevent other trees from being removed, especially if they have a development permit or a building permit, which they have about 2 years, I believe. Maybe a little bit different for building permit. I think it might be 6 months, but the 2 years window kind of limits what we can do in that interim. But definitely we do actively pursue the noxious weed issue. And we do have some regulations on our own properties as well for maintaining noxious weeds. You'll actually see that in the budget coming up in the next few weeks. We have an amount allocated every year to clear our own broom from our own properties. So.
Thank you, Your Worship. And as a follow-up through to our CAO. So do those complaints, I'm obviously only talking City of Parksville here, regarding the broom, is it complaint driven, like as a bylaw, or is it just our very efficient park staff are continually driving around noticing, and then send a notice to the property owners? Because I understand, but there's a couple of sites that I am aware of that it takes a little while for them to get around to cleaning it. In the meantime, the brooms have flowered and seeded and done their damage before they get to it. So I'm just wondering how that complaint is driven.
If I may, Your Worship, so a combination of things. I'm aware that we've actually, our park staff have actually introduced some property owners to volunteers to help where they're not here or they're not able to take care of it. And it's a combination of both. So this council actually passed a new policy that does include property maintenance or unsightly as one of the priorities that the bylaw guys can proactively enforce. So a bit of both, like if they get a complaint, they would act on that, but they also have the authority from council to proactively enforce that part of the bylaw. So combination of those. And then I know, as I say, our park staff are very familiar with the different options for folks, if it's private property or adjacent. A lot of the time where it's adjacent to our property and has kind of the blowover effect, they certainly work with them to try and help them out to actually comply with the rules.
Councillor Chandler. I think you broke it.
There we go. Okay, there we go. Sorry. Thank you through your worship to Joanne. Thank you, Joanne, for your excellent work out there with this. I think one thing I'd like to mention is every time you come in, I seem to have this fixation on Broome for the rest of the year as I'm driving up and down the highways. And so I really notice it out there, but I just wanted to pass on. I know that rest of council would be the same, that we want to thank the volunteers, especially the 400 and the 600 and yourself who had been involved in this from a long time ago. And I think your work here is really great. And we just want to recognize the volunteers and please pass on our thank you to them because it really makes a difference in our community. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any, Councillor Patterson?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Joanne. And now I've seen Joanne for many, many years here with presentations in regards to Broome. And so this may sound like a strange type question to you, but I'm wondering on the volunteers are repeat volunteers, I would imagine for most part, such as yourself and everything. So do you have succession type plans in place as well, or recruitment type drives? Thank you.
Well, it's really helpful when, actually, this is a good point. It's really helpful when we can put signs up in municipalities or along the Ministry of Transportation roads. And it's really helpful when we have newspaper and radio coverage, because then we do have people contact us saying, hey, we want to take part in this. A lot of the helpers that are in Parksville have been cutting broom for over 10 years, you know, a long time. But we're always people do get older and they do move away, you know, so we're always looking for you know, new volunteers. And, you know, through our signs and through the news media seems to be and even what you post on the, you know, Parksville site is very helpful in letting people know that there's something that can be done, because a lot of people hate broom, but they don't know, oh, how do I get in touch with, you know, who's doing this? What can I do? And then as soon as they get hold of us, no matter where they live on Vancouver Island or Powell River, you know, we'll refer them to, you know, the closest community, and then they deal directly with those area organizers.
Thank you. Any further questions? I think the only thing that it almost seems so insignificant to say thank you with the huge amount of work that you and your group do. You know, whether it's 400, 600 of you or one of you, it all works towards making our environment a little bit better place. And so thank you very much for all that you do for our community. We really appreciate it. And if we can do anything to help you out, you just let us know.
Well, thank you.
Oh, Councillor Patterson?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just wondering if at this point in time, I could put forward a motion for staff and everything as well for city staff to have an in-kind for collecting the cut broom. And I also have a question towards yourself and that as well, if we could bring forward to the RDN, or maybe if Joanne could make a presentation to the RDN. I don't know if you have in the past.
I have in the past, and I was going to sign up to do it again. I needed you're my first delegation of the year, and I feel comfortable with you all. So now that I've been here, I will register to sign up to be a delegation at the RDN.
All right. Just to answer your question real quick before I look for a seconder on your resolution is that, yes, either Councillor Fraz or myself will bring it up to somebody at the region so that they can see if they can help out in the same manner that we do here. I think it's a good cause. So I just made a note of it. Thank you. And now I need a seconder for the resolution that's on the floor. Councillor Chandler is making a discussion on this. All those in favor? I had no doubt about that one. All right. Thank you very much. And thank you, Joanna. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Now, the next delegation up is Mr. Robertson from K.S Railings Ltd. It should be, yeah, it's the one right beside the talking head there. There you go. Just take the rest of them off. Welcome, and you have 10 minutes to talk about what you're going to do with your property.
Thank you, Your Worship and councillors. I hope everyone's having a good day today. I'm just waiting for my laptop to boot up here. Just a second.
This is where we require you to do a dance on the stage behind you while you're waiting for it to.
So I'm just here to talk about my business today and what our plans are for the future. My company, K.S Railings, we manufacture and professionally install custom railing systems, railings and glass. The commercial contractor work is our key market segment. We do complete customization, and that makes us a key differentiator in the market. Our product and service diversity and end-to-end service are a key competitive advantage against our local competitions, and we maintain strong relationship with both suppliers and customers. And that's been able to allow us to maintain a steady market growth and market position.
If you excuse me for just a second, Mr. Robertson, because I have to interject, if you don't mind. The purpose of this delegation is to speak to what you're going to be doing with your property that you're asking for approvals on. So that's what we need to hear, is what it is that you want to do with your property.
Well,
with the property.
We're hoping to be using it as a manufacturing plant for manufacturing and distribution of aluminum and glass railings.
Okay. And are we looking for any variances or any changes to the zoning at this point in time?
Correct. Yeah, it's currently a commercial zoning on the property, and we would require an industrial zoning in order for using it for those purposes.
That is certainly unfortunate, because I mean, it was industrial at one time and then it went to commercial. Now it's going back again.
That's true. Yes.
Yeah, there's a whole story there that goes back years, but thank you for that. What can we do to help you get that approval through, or at least bring it to the council for approval?
Well, I imagine anything that you could do would be helpful. I mean, I know it's in an industrial zoning or an industrial park already currently, so I imagine it wouldn't be too difficult to do that. I know that we're planning on, we have 32 full-time employees right now, and the facility that we're using right now is a quarter of the size. So if we could use this facility, we would be able to hire several more people and grow our company, and it would be a positive thing for the community. I believe we'd be able to employ many people in the local area and also provide services to local builders and local people that live in the community.
That's good. That's good information. Go ahead,
Sorry,
please.
if I may, Your Worship, the rezoning requires the property owner to come before council. So there
I
is a
understand
report
that.
later on the agenda with some of the technical elements.
I understand that. What I can't let happen, though, is that it becomes a marketing or an advertisement for the business. This is what is the purpose of the application, is what it's supposed to be for the delegation. And so that's fine. We do understand that. And it is coming up in the near future, in the next little bit, for approvals or for consideration at that point in time. So I think you might want to stay and go from there. But in the meantime, if there's any questions, Councillor Franz, Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you. Through the mayor, to our delegation. So you're wanting to bring the manufacturing to this property. What is it that is there? You're going to be building a manufacturing plant there, imagine then? Is that correct?
No, we would just use the existing building that's there currently.
So would there be any changes to the land as it is, or you're just going to be inside there? It's just the zoning particular that you're looking to change? And
We could use it as is right now. There's no changes needed at this point.
thank you.
Councillor O'Brien, please.
Thank you, through your worship. Through Mr. Robertson, thanks for coming here today, presenting your proposal to us. Welcome to Parksville. We appreciate it that you have confidence in Parksville anyways to set up a manufacturing business. Roughly how many people will you be employing, Mr. Robertson, out of your operation? I understand, if I heard you right, you do installation as well as building, fabricating?
Correct.
So approximately how many people will you employ?
We're employing 32 people right now, and we're expecting to see a 70% increase in growth over the next 3 years. So I imagine we would have up to 50 or 60 employees at that time.
At which time you're hoping to open, do powder coating at the same facility? And if I'm familiar with the area, it's the old Sunburst Skylight building, is it not?
Correct.
Okay, so know exactly where you're operating from, so that'd work out good. So the thing is that you say you currently have 30 people, so you're already operating from another location, are you, sir?
In Nanaimo, yes.
Yes. So are you moving that location to Parksville?
Well, we will keep that facility still running and operational, but it'll be scaled down operation there, and we'll be moving primarily. Our primary operations would be out of Parksville.
Well, I'd like to hear that.
Yeah.
Thank you. So you've answered my question, Mr. Robertson. I wish you success anyways, and I know we're looking at the zoning later on. But the thing is that I appreciate the fact that you're providing quite a few jobs for here. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Chandler.
Thank you, through your worship, to Mr. Robertson. Thank you for coming in. It's great, great to see you guys are going to be expanding, and absolutely great to see the jobs potentially coming this way, because we see that a lot of it going the other way in a lot of cases. So it's nice to see. Plus, to be able to see that skylight building being used properly, it's got a, it's got a temporary function there now, I think, for a bit. And I think long term, that's going to be a great property for you to be operating out of, and easy to get to. So thank you.
I should make a correction. It's actually the neighboring property to that. It's Jim's Gym right now.
Gym.
Yeah, yeah. Right, yeah.
Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship, and to Mr. Robertson. Can you tell me how long K.S Railings Ltd has been in business in Nanaimo?
Yeah, K.S Railings was started in 1969, originally as an ironworks company. And in the 80s, we transitioned into aluminum and glass products. And recently, I just became primary shareholder, bought out my partner, and brought in my younger brother as a junior partner. So it's me and my brother now. But I've been with the company since 91. It's 31 years this year, so I'm pretty familiar with the business.
Lovely. Thank you.
Do we have any other questions? Mr. Robertson, thank you very much for giving us the information that you have. As I said, we're going to be addressing this in the coming agenda. So if you'd like to sit, you're more than welcome to wait until that happens. Please feel free. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
We're going to be looking at correspondence. We have one. Pardon me.
And
Sorry, yes, yes,
and
you're right. Are we there? I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, okay, that's fine. So we do from LOLA Architects, Inc., Mr. Lowe.
Hello there. Sorry, I because of the 30-second delay, I just didn't quite realize we were up, but that's okay.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm just gonna share my screen here. Go to the beginning. All right. Hello, Council. Thank you for accepting us as a GET delegation today. We're really excited to talk about this project with you. So we're working with Saywell Construction and a local area developer on the plot at 103-113 Jensen Avenue. So right at the corner of Craig Street and Jensen Avenue. So the idea with this project is actually to combine these two sites and do a mixed use multifamily development. So I'll just walk you through that really quickly. The site plan here again, so we've got what we're looking at. I'm just going to switch to the next page here. So what we're looking at is a main floor of retail commercial space that would actually have also some bike storage and scooter storage for the residents within the building. Parking would be provided by surface parking. So we've got 29 stalls here, and we're actually anticipating 29 residential units as well. And so any parking for the commercial retail space, we'd be providing cash in lieu because we wouldn't be able to fit parking for that actually on the site. But again, so right here along Craig Street and Jensen Avenue, the idea of retail commercial space, we don't know what this is yet. It'll have to be leased out. So right now it's left fairly open. We've got bike storage here along Jensen Avenue, and then the main entrance up into the residential space would be right off of Craig Street. There'd be scooter storage there for the residents of the building, and then elevator up to the rooms above. What we're anticipating is 29 units, so an average 10 units per floor with the exception of the main floor, second floor. One of the one-bedroom units would actually be converted into storage, and that would be storage lockers for the residents within the building. But a typical floor plan levels 3, 4 have 4 2-bedroom units, and then 5 1-bedroom units, and a 1-bedroom plus den. And these would all be rental units with views, again, with large balconies, the views out towards the ocean and then views of the city. So view from Jensen Avenue. So again, what we're looking at is a 4-story development with that commercial retail at grade, really right on that street face, and then the 3 levels of rental apartments above. Again, here's the view from Craig Street, where we do have that kind of waste and recycling and those service spaces on the main floor. We're just looking at prettying that up with a bit of a green wall as opposed to just having a blank facade in that location. The materials on the building will be kind of clean and simple and very durable. So a mix of fiber cement siding, so basically a hardy type panel in a beige, kind of light beige color, as well as some charcoal. We'd have the dark brick as well as some wood look aluminum siding that would wrap up and be the kind of soffit spaces that you see underneath these balcony. So then you see just kind of the drawings here showing it in 2D. So again, the west elevation along Craig Street, here's along Jensen Avenue, the south elevation, and then the 2 interior elevations treated very similar to those outward facing, and these are the ones that face that parking level. We have another 3D here to show you that, but just showing, again, we've got a sloped roof on the upper levels that's actually being used as a screening to screen any mechanical equipment in the elevator overrun, so you're not seeing those from the street. And so here's another view from Jensen Avenue. Here you can see where that bike storage would be. We've treated it very much like the commercial spaces, but this glazing would actually be frosted and obscured, so you can't see what's in there. But again, we didn't want it to feel like a blank facade along the street. And then within each of these retail or commercial entrances, we actually have a bench and a set-in planter just to provide a little bit of relief along the streetscape. Again, here's the view from the laneways. So you'll see that surface parking, the back entrance to those commercial retail units. And then we've got the units above. So in terms of the bylaw and how we fit in, the max FAR for the site right now is 2. The proposed development is at 1.65. The max height is 11 meters. We're asking for a variance to go to 15.5. So that's really adding that 4th story. The front setback bylaw requirement is 0 meters, which we're providing. And the rear and side setbacks again as well. The allowed rear is 4 meters and the side is 0. So we're within those. There is a parking setback of 3 meters to the rear property line. So I'll go through this as well. All the ones that are highlighted, we can have diagrams to talk through those. So the parking setback of 3 meters to the rear property line, we're treating that more of a side property line. So we have 1.6 in a few places, but we actually have 3 in a few others. Dwelling stalls, so one parking stall per dwelling unit, and we are actually providing that. But as I mentioned, we're not providing any commercial parking stalls, and instead this will be provided as a cash in lieu. Standard parking stalls of 2.7 meters by 5.8 meters are being provided. However, the drive aisle right now, the bylaw requirement is for 7.5 meters, and right now we're providing 7 meters, and I'll talk through that in a little bit. And then a landscaping strip is required along residential property lines, and right now along the south and the west. So those are the faces where we have the commercial right up on the street face of Jensen and Craig. So we don't have a setback of a landscaping strip there. And then also the site triangle being measured from the parcel line as per the bylaw requirements. We'll talk through where we're at with that. So again, the five variances that we're going after, and I'll just go through these one by one. So this is the first one. As I mentioned, bylaw has a 3 meter height. We're looking at a 15.5 meter to get that additional story, but then also to allow for that sloped roof parapet that will really hide the mechanical and the elevator overrun, so you won't be able to see that from the street. The second is the overall width of the drive aisle and the parking stalls. So the city of Parksville right now asks for an overall distance. Basically, if you look at a double loaded drive aisle with parking on both sides, so 5.8 meters for the parking stall depth, and then 7.5 meters for the drive aisle, and then another 5.8 meters for the parking stall, which is a total of 19.1 meters. We've looked at, it's just on the site that's difficult for us to achieve. So what we've provided is 5.8 for the parking stall, 7 meters for the drive aisle, and then 5.8 for the parking stall. And just in terms of the rationale and how that compares, so we did look in other jurisdictions. So in Victoria, that overall dimension that we're looking at right now of 18.6 meters. In Victoria, that's actually 7.2. In Nanaimo, it's at 18.3, and in Calgary, it's at 18 meters. So we feel that the 18.6 is actually still generous in comparison to a lot of other jurisdictions. In terms of this setback from the rear property line for landscaping, you'll see this kind of diagonal line with the rear lane right here. That's that 3 meter setback. And in these two locations, where just to, again, fit those parking requirements in, we have pulled it back in 2 locations. So it gets down to about 1.6 meters to the rear property line. But otherwise, we have provided that 3 meter setback along the lane. Again, this one talks to that 1.5 meter landscaping setback along the front and side property line, where again, we're providing almost a zero lot line because we do want to get that commercial retail space right on the property line and right at the sidewalk, which aligns and is very similar with what's happening kind of further down the street. And finally, at the corner, the site triangle. So the way that the bylaw is written in Parksville is that we were to provide a 6 meter site triangle from the parcel lines, which right now we're providing 2.3 meter site triangle from the parcel line, just to maximize the usage of the site, because normally where that issue comes into play is can somebody see when they're maneuvering and turning around that corner? And right now, if we look at that distance from the edge of the curb, we do provide more than 6 meters from the edge of the curb, which allows for a good line of sight in order to make that turn or make that maneuver. So it's still a safe condition. Yeah. And so that basically kind of really quickly, because I know we have 10 minutes, walks through the development and what we're proposing and the variances that we're requesting. And I'm just going to leave it on this image so you can get a sense of the project for any questions.
Thank you very much.
You're
Do
welcome.
we have any questions for the delegation? Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a couple here, if I may. Thank you for your presentation, Ms. Lowe. The view that you're showing right on the shared screen right now is one I had a question for. You were suggesting that since that is going to be commercial along Jensen there, that all the storefronts and so forth will be zero lot line. There's no allowance for a landscaping strip. Is that correct?
That's correct. We have set in where the actual doors and entrances would be to allow for benches and to make sure that no door swings would pass that property line. But yes, otherwise we have pulled it up as a zero lot line.
Thank you. So so in the rendering here, all those beautiful trees along Jensen, those are actually City of Parksville trees, are they not?
They are, yes.
It makes the building look good. So with nice trees. Okay, I was just clarifying that anyways, because I thought, wow, that's interesting that they're shown actually in front of your rendering. But anyways, my other question is, or just a comment, I do like the fact that you're showing bike storage, which is really good, especially with this location. You're going to be central downtown. My only question is that the bike storage, have you, and maybe you've allowed for it, and maybe Mr. Russell could also comment. But the e-bikes phenomenon is taking over. It's taking over Parksville, like all the rest of North America here. So a lot of that bike storage would be probably e-bikes. And so I'm just wondering if there are electrical receptacles sufficient enough to power all those new e-bikes that seem to be taking over.
I think that that's something we can easily talk to the developer about and look at. We have actually already had those discussions. We know that that's very important in the area that you're in. Same thing for this scooter storage, so that if somebody does want to park their scooter there, as opposed to taking it up to their unit, they would have the ability to charge it there. And I don't think that the bikes would be treated any differently. So yeah, I think that could easily be accommodated.
And that's great. And then one quick follow-up that I just had to notice on your renderings. The name is, I'm just curious, Thomas Manor.
Thomas Manor.
Yeah, and how did you come back with the name? Is there a famous Thomas person in your life, or what's going on?
I do not know the answer to that one.
Okay.
You would have to ask the group that's looking to develop it. That was just what we were told the name of the building will be.
Okay, thank you very much. Naming of buildings and places seem to be so dangerous these days, with all the innuendo and so forth. So I was just curious. Anyways, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Ms. Lowe, for the presentation.
You're welcome.
Yeah, as you know, this is a revite. We're revitalizing our downtown, and this is within that area. So, everything that comes through we're really excited to see new development here. So that's great. I do have a couple of questions though for you. They would probably have to do with some of the variances and how that might impact the services such as garbage pickup and where would people park for commercial? Where would drop-offs be, pickup be, cabs, ambulances, all of those sort of things? I might have a couple of others, but maybe you could just address those for now. Thank you.
Sure, yeah. So looking at the site, I'm just gonna zoom out to, I'll go to this one. So in terms of garbage and any loading waste, those types of things, we do have a loading stall here that's off of Craig Street, just beside the lane, and that has its own letdown. So this is the intent that somebody garbage pickup would happen in this location. So garbage recycling, those types of things. This loading stall can also be booked and used for people moving in and out of the building. So because you'll have a larger, probably moving vehicle at that time. So that's the intention of this loading stall. And that in terms of bylaw requirements for the size of the development, one loading stall would be enough. You just couldn't park there when they're doing waste collection and such. That will probably also be used for the commercial retail loading as well. In terms of pickup drop off, likely would just be along Craig Street or along Jensen Avenue, unless somebody does come into the back here to drop someone off. But for the majority in the back would be just for residents. I think ambulance is probably the same as pickup and drop off, just along Jensen Avenue or Craig Street. And again, or somebody could pull into the back. In terms of the commercial parking, that was one where we're looking to not provide it on site in hopes that the majority of people that would be coming to these locations, because it is so central, would be walking, biking, or taking transit. So that's not accommodated on the site, and instead we would be providing the cash in lieu per the bylaw requirements. Does that answer all your questions on loading?
Thank you. Through your worship, I'm just thinking there was one here. It was about, I guess it's about the guest parking and commercial parking, because there isn't any parking along Craig Street.
Yeah.
So Jensen is right across from the City Hall. This is a really prominent location, and we've got other developments coming, Kitty Corner on Jensen as well. It'll be fairly large. So I think that my concern is not providing parking, extra parking. And I think that much as we would like for people to walk, I'm a big proponent of walkable cities. However, we're not there yet. And we do need cars in Parksville. So I think eventually that might be the case. But right now, that could really clog up Jensen, because we have people parking there for all sorts of reasons now. We've got a large development at Berwick. So parking might be a bit of a premium right now. The other thing I just wanted to mention to you, I noticed that you did put car chargers in, electric car charge spaces, and that's wonderful. And you've put in a storm management system. Any thought about putting in solar ready panels or pipes?
You know what? I could ask. I mean, we do have room on the roof. That would definitely be a question for the developer. And I think the way in which we designed it with the sloped parapets going up to, we could easily accommodate solar on the roof. But yeah, does that answer your question? Like right now, I haven't heard of any desire for the parking, but
I don't know what you mean by desire for the parking.
oh, sorry, desire for solar panels. I apologize. Yeah, I haven't heard any desire for solar panels on the client side, but that doesn't mean it's something that they couldn't look into and we couldn't accommodate. And if we did, I think they would be sheltered from view, but not sheltered from sun, just the way that existing roof line is working. So
Okay, could I just go through the worship for one more question, please? Thank you. So there are a lot of, pardon me, losing my voice. There are a lot of developers right now who are putting, who are making solar ready projects. So that just is something to think of. There's just one other thing that I noticed. You're asking for 15.5 meters, but the actual building on the laneway on Craig side is at 16.367 meters high.
Yeah, I'm just going to go to that drawing.
So in actual fact, you want more height variance, I would think.
No, well, the reason we're asking for 15.5, so this line down here, the way that the bylaw reads is that height is measured from the average grade along the site. So yes, at the tallest corner, it's more at the 16.5, but because of the slope on the site, so we're taking it from that average grade point as per the bylaw.
Thank you.
Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to the delegation, I'd like to carry on with some of Councillor Wilson's comments, and that the waste removal, I find it to be a wee bit challenging. I'm wondering if it will be a private waste removal rather than the current structure of the RDN, where they do not have operators leave the vehicle. So I guess that's my first question, and then I have two others. Thank you.
Okay. Normally in a multifamily building, the waste collection is private, yes. So that would be a private waste collector.
And then follow up, Your Worship. Sure. Okay, so the first floor is retail, and again, related in some ways to garbage and also to the loading areas. You're looking basically at retail that doesn't require a great deal of loading, or that would end up having a lot of waste in those retail facilities. Would that be a fairly correct assumption?
I don't know that we know what we're looking, like what those spaces are going to be. But so we have actually sized the waste room slightly generous. And we could draw in the bins and such for you. But what we're what we're planning for right now would allow for, we could see it being a small cafe could be in that space, or it could be just general retail. We don't want to limit it. We don't know what it might be. But yeah, basically all waste would go to that waste room for both the residents and the retail. And in terms of loading, I mean, most businesses always try to have that loading and waste collection to be off peak hours, mostly because they don't want it interrupting their business either. People are less likely to come into a retail or commercial space if loading and stuff is happening during open hours. So I think that would be part of the bylaws, is that you do that off hours.
I would think that there would be some definite challenges with loading in regards to Jensen and Craig Street. Councillor Wilson has mentioned already that we have another development as well, and I have some definite concerns on the amount of traffic and concerns for safety of residents. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you very much for your presentation. This is coming up, I believe, later in the package, so we'll be handling it from there. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much.
Have a great day.
Thanks. Bye.
Correspondence. We have three pieces that we're going to take individually because of what they are. So the first one is from Jay Bagnall from the RDN, and it's regarding the 69 pool service. And I need a mover and a seconder for the recommendations. Moved by Councillor Chandler, second by Councillor O'Brien. Discussion? All those in favor? There's nobody against, so we're okay. Next, again by Jay Bagnall from the RDN, the Drinking Water and Watershed Protection Service Amendment Bylaw. I need a mover and a seconder for the recommendation. Was that a reluctant move, or was that just a okay. Seconded by Councillor O'Brien? Discussion? Okay, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Third one, we could have done these all in one, I guess. Third one is from Ms. Hayes from the Island Crisis Care Society. And I need a mover and a seconder for receiving. Moved by Councillor Wilson, second by Councillor O'Brien. Discussion? Councillor O'Brien?
Thank you, Your Worship. This was, I believe, correspondence as requested by our CAO. Thank you very much to our CAO for sending this. Do we require a motion further to appoint Councillor Wilson as liaison at this time, or and then do we have to?
No.
Is that necessary this time?
I
was just
would
asking
just-
CAO, sorry, through your worship, of course.
Go ahead, you can answer.
If I may, Your Worship, so the first motion is to receive, and then if there's additional direction for staff, we would require a motion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we're receiving. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Now, you can bring it up. You wish to. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. At this time, after receiving the documentation, I would like to make a motion that the liaison for the, I guess it's the task force anyways, be appointed to Councillor Wilson, as previously discussed at this time, and then for staff to make them recommended contact with the task force to understand the schedule and requirements and terms of reference for that committee. And if we could appoint Councillor Wilson, that would be my desire at this time. Thank you.
Appreciate that. I think at this point in time, we're just looking for approval to appoint a liaison. That still falls under the jurisdiction of the mayor to appoint the liaisons. By the way, it'll be the same individual, just as, so we've got the technicality of it right. So I need a seconder just to appoint a liaison is what we would probably do. Councillor Patterson. There we go. All those in favor? And yes, I will be appointing Councillor Wilson. All right. The last part is correspondence meeting with the Ministry of Health and Island Health. The council requests the Minister of Health to instruct his deputy minister to meet with council in a public meeting as committed to by him in the fall of 2020 and in subsequent correspondence and conversations with the mayor and council in order to discuss the provincial harm reduction program and options to mitigate improperly discarded needles in our community. I need a mover and a seconder for that motion. Moved by Councillor Chandler, seconded by Councillor Patterson. Discussion? Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. So earlier at the beginning of this council meeting, you requested either it to be open to the public or a rise in reports or various other types of communication so that we get that out to the public. So I'm just wondering if we're having a discussion regarding that per se, or I'm not quite sure if it was fully mentioned in your motion.
The motion here is that it would be a public
Open,
meeting.
Public.
A public meeting, yes.
So just for clarification, that would be open to public to attend in the said forum?
Yes.
And that, or? And then a follow-up, would there be questions from the public or just in attendance?
No, just the intent was for just attendance so that they could hear the discussion and witness what was being said. But, you know, it would be at a council meeting is in really delegation type. pardon me?
So,
If I may, Your Worship, sorry to interject, but it would be set up as a special council meeting.
Yes.
And the ministry folks would be attending virtually at this time as per their COVID policy. But we could have in-person attendance from the public here.
Yes.
follow up, Your
Yeah,
Worship?
please keep going.
Thank you. So by announcing this meeting and everything today, and the date set for it is coming up very, very soon, we would not be able to have any correspondence from the public to city staff to have on the agenda or to be able to read or advise the health minister?
No. To answer your question, at the beginning of this has been going on for over 2 years, where we've received copious amount of information, correspondence, discussions with the public since that particular time. I have a file that's relatively thick, actually 2 files that are relatively thick with all the correspondence and communications on this. Basically, what we've done is the purpose of this is for the ministry and the Island Health to explain why what we're recommending. It's not what we want as much as tell us why you're not approving what we propose. We've already approved what we want a long time ago, and they just have been kind of dragging their feet on getting back to us on this. So this is where we're at. This is not something that we're, just give us the information. And then from that point, I think at that point, Councillor Patterson, I think it makes an awful lot of sense to have discussions with the public once we've heard what the ministry and the Island Health has to say. If they, you know. Okay. Any other? Councillor O'Brien?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, and I can echo, I think, what Councillor Patterson was getting at. I'm confused that it's actually now going to be a special council meeting, because I thought the original correspondence was it not just a general, like it was a Zoom meeting, I thought, or like a telephone correspondence, you know, like what we've done before. So that's, you know, when you asked who was available and who wasn't, I thought this Friday wasn't specific notice, but now all of a sudden you're requesting it become a special council meeting. Is that correct? Or it's not a committee of the whole? This is the special council
It's a
meeting.
council meeting. Yeah.
Okay.
If I may, Your Worship, this was, if council recalls, somebody did attend a September meeting from Island Health, but didn't speak to the issues that council had asked. So initially, this was supposed to happen in an open meeting last May, and council advised they would prefer to have the person attend in person. And so at that time, it was still virtual. And so we delayed it to the September meeting, at which time they still didn't attend in person and then didn't speak to the issues that council had asked for clarification about, basically why they rejected the city's bylaw, and I guess more information on how we could move forward with solutions. And so there were a number of different things proposed, like retractable needles, or perhaps addressing the amount of needles that were given to individuals, because we were finding clean and used needles. And so I think our understanding was that council had asked and been told by the minister that this would be a public meeting. And in fact, the mayor, I believe, announced that at the PDBA in August, I think it was, that would be an opportunity for them to attend and listen to the discussion. So we had set up that meeting for Friday as a Teams meeting. If it's open to the public, we would set it up as an open meeting, basically, or a special council meeting, so that council could make decisions at that meeting if you wish. The other option would be that it start the conversation in a closed workshop type format. So therefore, it would just be council and the representatives from Island Health. And at a later date, council could announce, you know, progress if any is made, or invite the ministry folks to attend an open meeting once there's been some discussion. And so I think at this point, there's confusion. The ministry felt that this was going to be a private meeting only, but we understood, and we had sort of, I guess, communicated in numerous different formats, written and on telephone conversations between some of the members of council and the minister, that it was supposed to be an open public meeting. So before we move forward, we just want some direction from council on what you're willing to do with that meeting, because if you don't want it to be open, or if you don't want it to be closed, then we can give the right advice to the staff at the ministry that are organizing it. At this point, we're expecting to have the deputy ministers from both Island, I think it's the deputy minister from Ministry of Health and the CEO from Island Health are supposed to be attending, but they thought it was a closed meeting. So we didn't, I guess there was misunderstanding on that between the two of us.
The object of this is not to come up with anything but reasons, explanations, I guess is a better choice of words, explanations from these two groups as to what is it in their harms program that is being affected by what we proposed, what council passed unanimously, I might add, where we passed way back 2 years ago, and tell us why it is, and explain to us why we can't get what we're looking for, which is the retractable needles and some of the other things that were in that. So that was the purpose of it. We can do it two ways, as the CAO has indicated. We can do this in a closed meeting, or we can do it in an open meeting. If we do it in an open meeting, we can do it as a committee of the whole, which accomplishes no different in this situation than if we did it as a council meeting. So, I mean, to call it, if you want to call it a committee of the whole, we can call it a committee of the whole. But the reality is that it's a council meeting. We're going to listen to what they have to say. Then we can decide whether we want to pursue this any further, or just say, okay, we've got all the information we need, and the public has had an opportunity to hear this. I think one of the big things we've heard over and over and over again, that the community hasn't had an awful lot, hasn't heard a lot about this. So now we're going to make sure that they do it. That's why I prefer having it as an open council meeting rather than a closed meeting. So it's a very straightforward. I have no idea how long this will take. Usually these meetings, the ministers usually allocate an hour and a half. 20 minutes. Anyways, Councillor Frass.
Thank you. I'm just wondering if you know if there's been any indication that they would not meet if we were to require it to be open meeting.
I'm sorry.
I'm wondering if they give any indication that they would not meet with us or back out of the meeting if it was an open meeting.
They haven't at this point in time. You've been talking to their people, so.
If I may, Your Worship, through you to Councillor Frass, there hasn't been an indication either way, but I think the format or the discussion points perhaps might be different, just given the sensitivity perhaps around privacy or some of the other health discussions. I think it was really a surprise to them that we, on our end, were setting it up as an open meeting, as we had thought was communicated. But somewhere between the minister call, which I think several councillors participated on, it was a telephone call. Sometimes that's harder than an in-person meeting. They were just under the impression that it was not going to be an open council meeting. They did not say that they wouldn't attend. I think that would be maybe perceived as a threat or so, but the minister had committed to having them meet with us. And I think there's been a fair bit of confusion. I mean, certainly when they attended the open meeting and didn't speak to anything, that we were very confused as to how that could have happened. So I think there's maybe a risk that everybody may not attend who is planning to if it is open, or the content or the information shared might be different.
Just let me finish on this one, just to tie up the loose end on this one. In my mind here, if they do say we're not coming if it's an open meeting, my question to them is, what is it that's so secretive or so, there's nothing in the act allows for a closed meeting on this subject, as far as I can tell. I mean, if you did it, you'd be right out on thin ice on it, in my mind. I believe that it should be an open meeting based on what the act says. It can be a closed meeting. So having said that, I think that if they decide not to come or not to attend, that they know that this was always an open meeting. We canceled it. It was in May. It was for a council meeting. And one in September was for a council meeting. Then all of a sudden between September and now, it changed to an in-camera meeting. We never, certainly didn't give them any indication that we wanted an in-camera meeting. They just made that assumption. So anyways, that's my view. I've got Councillor O'Brien and Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think to stay with protocol, would it not be best to conduct this in an open committee of the whole meeting, whereby we can have more of that informal discussion, so that if the discussion isn't addressing the questions we have, we can take that into that area more informally in the open public. But the trouble is, if they came in and even a special council meeting, they would have to appear as a delegation like everyone else. That's the protocol that we have to stick to. And then it's not as conducive, maybe, as I say, to have an open discussion as to what we're hoping to achieve, and maybe some collaboration with them to help us get there. Otherwise, we're going to be limited to the rules on our delegations with 10 minutes and so forth in an open council. So I agree with what you're saying. Put it in the open. That's amazing. We should be doing that. But I think to have more of a meeting like we had it in the last time, in a regular council meeting, and they appeared by Zoom, of course. But the thing is that none of the issues that we wanted to discuss ever came up, and it was just like, and then they were gone. So the thing is that we didn't achieve anything at that point. So I just think committee of the whole is going to make it easier for us. It can still be in the open. It can still be not on camera. It can still be live streamed. But the thing is that we have that ability to maybe carry on. Thank you.
I don't know who said that, but anyways, it's always been my intent here that if this would start out as a council meeting, if at any point in time we wanted to fold it over to become we can, by way of a vote, just like you do when you go into closed meetings, by way of a vote saying that we want to go into a committee of the whole, so that we can to break it down and talk about it as a group, one-on-one, or however we want to do it. That's perfectly okay to do, and then come back into the final council meeting. We're picking on words, if you will, in this one. A council meeting and a committee of the whole meeting will end up with the same result and with the same open communications. We've waited damn near 2 years for this. We don't want to lose it because we can't speak or can't not speak on it. So I'd agree with you. We'll start with a regular council meeting would be my plan. And then if need be, if somebody wants to, you all have the ability to make the motion. I'd like to, to go into committee of the whole, and we can do it at that point in time. So, that can happen at any time. It's, as long as you get the majority of people, which I would assume you would in that discussion, we'd be fine. So that's the plan anyhow. All right, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I believe our CEO answered some of my question, which was that they might feel limited in what they say, and that was a concern. And I guess if that were the case, we're in a committee of the whole or meeting, can we, if they felt that they needed to, we could then ask for a closed meeting at that time?
Go ahead.
If I may, Your Worship, provided we could figure out what section they would be closing the meeting under, then yes. So they could disclose, what it is they want to speak to. And then there's limited rules under the charter, section 90 of the charter, that if they meet that test, then we would go into closed.
Yes, and I was just going to say, I do support being in an open meeting. I think it's a great idea. I think we need to be open to the public on this one. There's a lot of discussion out there. And as a matter of fact, I got an email asking when the meeting was going to be, and I said, there isn't a public meeting. So now I have to rewrite and say,
That's all right.
there might be a public meeting.
That's better news than saying it was a public meeting and been closed off. So yes, I agree.
Okay, thanks.
You have to remember, this all started and was derived from the request from the people. It wasn't any of us that brought this up originally. This was brought forward as a request by the residents of Parksville because of the problems they were having in the parks and so on with this. So I think they deserve to hear what they're, and quite honestly, if there's something secretive about their harms program, then maybe it isn't all that good if it's that secretive. So that's just my thought. I think let's put it to them and tell them it's going to be a public meeting. If they choose not to come, then we know where we stand with it, and we'll have that conversation amongst ourselves at the next council meeting at that point in time. I'm hoping that we're all going to be able to get along well on this and have this conversation. I'm dying to hear what they have to say. So any other questions? All right. Can we have, I'm going to call the vote then. All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. You're sitting here for a reason, Director Russell. Please present your report on the zoning and development bylaw amendment for Industrial Way.
Certainly, if I may, your worship and council, this afternoon for council consideration is the receipt of report for information and consideration in the bylaw section of giving the associated bylaw for 1222 Industrial Way for first and second reading and the setting of the public hearing date. This application was introduced to council originally back in November. Since that time, the applicant has now hosted a developer-hosted open house event. At that event, it is noted that it looks like 5 people were in attendance, 4 of which provided comment. Those comments have been attached to the council agenda. All the comments that were included appear to be supportive. There's details on how they posted their meeting. Essentially, this zoning, ultimately, should it be approved after consideration of public hearing, will facilitate the normalization of the zone on the property from its current CD zone, which is fairly limited to recreation facility, and will turn that into a standardized industrial zone, which the property had in the past. So for consideration is the recommendations per the agenda.
Thank you. I need a mover and a seconder on this. Councillor Patterson, Councillor Fraz. Discussion? Sad part about this whole thing is this circuitous route that it has gone. I mean, it started out as industrial, then went to commercial. Then in the meantime, since that time, industrial has now included the use that it was rezoned for. And so if nobody had ever done anything, the use would still be there and it would be zoned properly. So I think it certainly has a lot of merit. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just at this time, I wanted to say that, the change, it's reasonable. It's completely reasonable and as in our analysis represents an appropriate use and density for the location, which I do believe it does. I'm pleased that although we have a loss in a business, that we have a new business coming into the industrial park and into the city of Parksville. And maybe we'll have some new residents as well. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Anybody else? I have a question for the director. What's the timelines like on this if everything goes tickety tick?
If I may, Your Worship, so I believe the public hearing is set for 1 month from today. And then typically third reading would be considered 2 weeks after that. However, council may, if it so wishes, advance that. It could be considered directly after the public hearing. And then really it's if there's any outstanding servicing works, those need to be secured. And when once that's done, it would then come back for fourth reading.
Well, sorry, I'll just keep going for a couple. Well, this is for the zoning of the property. Building permit is the only other requirement. I would suspect we don't need a development permit because we're not changing the building in any size, shape, or form. So,
if I may, Worship, at this time with the railing business, that would be correct.
So it's just would we be encouraging the applicant to apply for a building permit prior to?
If they even require, if they even
question.
require one, depending on what they're doing structurally within the building in its current classification.
All right. Thank you. If there's no other questions, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you.
If I may, Your Worship and Council, before you today is the receipt of a report with respect to a development variance permit and development permit to facilitate a 4-story mixed commercial residential building at 103 and 113 Jensen Avenue East. So at this time, we're seeking council permission to go ahead with the variance notification and then defer consideration of the development permit until we've heard back on comment from the public. A lot of detail was provided earlier, but I'd be happy to go through any clarification on the variances if should they be desired or anything with respect to the development permit. So if I may, as per the agenda, the recommendations.
I need a mover and a seconder for the recommendation. Councillor Wilson is moving. I need a seconder. Pardon me?
We break this down, please.
Sure. Well, we break it down in one. So number 1, move to receive. Councillor Patterson, seconded by Councillor O'Brien. All those in favor? Carried. Number 2, required the notice of council's intent to consider the issuance of development permit. I need a mover and a seconder for that. Moved by Councillor Chandler, seconded by Councillor Fraz. Discussion, Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship. I do not support the development variance permit request at this particular time. The development, I'd like to deny that at this time based on the background information on page 81 and 84, which suggests anyways that the parking rules would have to be relaxed as well as the setbacks on both sides of the building. And it is basically due to the fact that the applicant has gone for a 15.6 meter building, adding another story to it, whereby which is affecting the amount of parking spots required, which is affecting the amount of setbacks they have in the property. I believe that setbacks were put in place anyways to have a proper OCP approved recommendation for that area. I believe it's in long and short to comply with those regulations that are in place. I believe that the proposed building, the 4-story building, is overbuilt for that area, for that particular site, and they cannot achieve the required regulations with that 4-story. So I will not support the variance permit request.
Thank you. Any other? I'm sorry, I don't know what that means.
Excuse me, I thought Councillor Patterson had her hand up and then I had mine.
Okay, fine.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson and Your Worship. Much like Councillor O'Brien, I guess I'd say that I had a business in the downtown core, not very far away from where this development is perceived to be. And I do believe that it is overbuilt and has some very serious considerations that that should be addressed. And I'm assuming it never went to the advisory design panel or anything. But
It did go to the panel, if I may.
It did? Okay. Okay. So those are just my comments. Thank you.
Any further comments? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Your Worship. So it did go to the design panel, and it's very rare for the design panel to ask that a project come back for a revisit. In this case, they did because of the numerous issues with this design, one of them being the overbuilt, what they considered overbuilt, which of course has that impact on parking and deliveries and landscape and all sorts of reasons for them to need the variance. So I could not support the to have this go through right now. I would make a motion that this the architects rework this and it go back to the ADP, and then I would consider the variances at that time.
Any further comments? Councillor O'Brien and Councillor Fraz. Oh, he's pointing to you. Go ahead.
Thank you. Just wanted to ask, just for clarity through yourself to
Yeah,
our
sure, go
director here. At this point, though, passing this motion would be putting out for public input. Is that correct? To get feedback before it would be considered?
If I may, Your Worship, through to, yes, that's correct.
Councillor Ferraz, yeah. Yeah, so I agree with a lot of the comments that I've heard as well. Considering that this isn't the approval stage here, I don't have a problem with putting it out for public input. I think it allows the developers to also get that feedback, take what they hear from council here today, from some of the serious concerns, and also be able to, adjust that if it's needed be. So I do share some of the concerns I hear, but since this isn't the approval or denial process here, I'd be inclined to support this motion for that public feedback.
Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through to Mr. Russell. I'm going to seek point of clarification at this time on Councillor Fraz and so forth. Is this not the time where council does not give approval to this? Because point 2 says to facilitate a 4-story mixed commercial residential building. Are we actually approving the request for the variance, or are we, or what are we not approving? Or how do we
Certainly.
take this back for a second look is what we're asking.
Certainly, if I may, Councillor O'Brien. So at this stage, staff is just seeking approval to proceed with notice. So there's no permit being issued today, either with respect to the development variance permit or the development permit. We're seeking your authorization to advance it to go to notice. That being said, at any step where an application comes before council, council has the opportunity to deny the application should it choose. But at this point, we're just seeking approval to move ahead with notice.
But we have the ability to deny it today if we wish.
You may deny it today, or you could after consideration of public input.
Right. Thank you on that, because how else other than going through the public input, going through all that process type of thing, I feel that it's appropriate for council be able to given the ability to let the developer know of what we are not satisfied with. We had the presentation and so forth. We asked good questions there. So I think we as council are apprised of it. Yes, we don't have the public input on it, but the thing is, we were the ones that had that the architect here anyways on site. So I would think it'd be appropriate to shut it down right now. If council is a majority to feel that way without public input, and if the majority of council feels that. My only other question, I will just go back on the other point I was going to make is the another point of alarm was the 0 lot line clearance that are brought up with the architect on facing Jensen. They have eliminated any landscaping strip on the entire portion of that piece of property, which it was just across the street of the building we're in right now. We, the city of Parksville, even have a landscaping strip all along Jensen that makes Jensen an attractive sidewalk area to walk down in front of it. This particular building is 0 lot line right up to the city of Parksville property, which is the sidewalk. So there's no room for any landscaping, and in our hopes of greening up our city, it's going to be really difficult to green it up through with no landscaping strip in front. So that's why I'm opposing it.
Okay, I'm going to speak first, and then you can speak after me, Councillor Wilson and Councillor Fraz. First off, it's interesting because I had the same feelings as that I'd really like to hear what the public has to say on this. And the reason I would like to do that is because the OCP, which is in a document that was developed by the people of Parksville, said that they wanted 4- and 5-story buildings in the downtown core. That was their requirement in that. We have been saying all along that we want to densify the population in the downtown core. Here we are, we're looking at densifying it and we go, oh, wait a minute, that building's too big. Well, you can't densify population without a bigger building. I believe that that building is as good as looking building as you're going to get on that corner based on the size of the land available. Other than that, it does, you have to ask the developer, but then you start to look at, does it make sense financially? You know, the 0 lot line, I'm not buying into that. You go throughout the whole of the downtown core and almost all of it is at a 0 lot line. There's virtually no, well, I shouldn't say virtually no, there are some, but there's very few that aren't on a 0 lot line. And the landscaping at the front, the reason the landscaping is around here, let's be honest, is because it was a school before. I mean, if we could have taken it right out to the street in those days, because up until just recently, there's always been a push to take streetscaping right to 0 lot line, so that it kind of created this corridor back in the days of the last 10 or 15 years. You know, in my mind, I want to hear what the public has to say on this. I think that they need to have input on it. We're not saying we're approving it at this point in time. We're saying, no, let's go to the next step. Hear the public. We've done that before. It's been done before. I don't see any reason why it shouldn't be done now. I mean, it's not costing us anything. At this point, it'll be up to the developer if he wants to proceed. I truly believe that this will be a good project. You know, it may need some tweaks here and there and some adjustments, but we're never going to get enough parking on a site for customers, and they're giving you 1 parking spot for every residence in there, but very few of the businesses downtown have their own parking lots. They use the streets, they can use the PCC parking lot, for gosh sakes, when the customers come in. It's across the street from it. There's all kinds of things that can be done. We can't keep putting up obstacles on these if we are saying we want to densify the population. We want to go to 4 and 5 story buildings. We want to have good looking buildings that meet a certain specification. I think that this meets almost all of it. The variances, there isn't a variance there that's a major variance in my mind, other than paying for the parking, which we allow in every case. We allowed it all the way down Welch Street on just about every project there. So that's my view. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I totally agree that we are trying to densify our downtown. However, we had a workshop with our Director of Planning some time ago, and we spoke about how we densify our downtown, how we want our downtown to look. And I recall Councillor Fraz saying, how do we make this happen? How do we get the vision we want? So I do disagree with you that this project will enhance our downtown as it stands. I think that a project there will and has the potential, but I do not think as this project is presented that it will enhance our downtown right now. I think there are adjustments that need to be made. The ADP went through a very extensive review of this, which unfortunately the council doesn't get to see. You'd have to watch that meeting. The other concern I have is that I agree in going out to the public, and I think that I welcome public input, especially with our OCP. However, I think it's only 50 meters around the property. There isn't much around there. There's the city hall, there's an empty parking lot, there's Stedman's, there may be some houses that are, I think, up for sale right now. So I'm not sure what feedback there's going to be in this case. If we were stuck in a residential area full of houses, yes, absolutely. But right now, I don't think we're going to get much feedback, and it will delay for the developer going forward. So I think it makes more sense to send the message to the developer that, you know, some of those issues that were addressed with the ADP, who are well-trained professional, in this case, architects and engineers and other design professionals chosen by their associations, who know how to read and interpret our downtown permit area and give the right feedback so that council can make informed decisions. That's the point of this. So I just don't see the necessity right now to send it out to public. I think this should go back with revisions And it would be very nice if the architect could actually present to the ADP. As it was before, the architect did not present, so therefore some of the questions that they had could not be addressed.
Thank you. Very good. Councillor Fraz and Councillor Chandler.
Thank you.
Go from there. I got you.
I don't think this is the time to be doing a wholesale rejection on a development property. It's not just the getting the public input, but it allows the developers a chance to come back to us with some of the things that we asked some questions about, like solar panels, like the bike e-stations and so on. They showed a willingness and that they were listening to us. And so I'd like to give them the chance to respond to that as well. Otherwise, you know, how do you, why even ask those questions? It was just going to be a no, completely throw it all out. We don't like anything that you got here. Start again. I think they deserve the chance to take that time, get the public feedback, but also then come to us. Maybe they'll withdraw on their own. Maybe they'll come up with a different plan. So they deserve that opportunity to hear what we had to say today and then respond to it as well. I just don't think we should do the whole throw the baby out with the bathwater, because there's some components there when this isn't even the approval process time.
Councillor O'Brien. Oh, I'm sorry. Councillor Chandler, I had you off to one side.
Thank you, through your worship. Just a comment too. I'd like to echo that particular sentiment with, I really think that there's a need to go to the public. I don't think we want to send a message to the developer right away that it's something at this point that we're completely unhappy with the program. I think that there was a willingness there. There was lots of questions to be answered by them, and I'm sure that she's already speaking to the developer about that right now. So I'd like to say I would support this to go to the process next to have the public look at it and give their feedback, and then at that point we can make some decisions there. But I think the other thing too is when we look at what's going to be going on around that area, we've got that big property on Jensen there that butts up against the fire station across the street. You know, clearly that's not going to be a smaller property. That's going to be a fairly large development. It's going to kind of, I would think, would fit in with what we're looking at in the downtown core and what's going to be happening in the downtown core, including the corner where the old YAM building was. I think we're going to see that whole area build. And I think we want that. We want that to look good, and we need to have some densification for affordable apartments. And the only way they're going to be affordable is to be able to get that densification. So we want more people living downtown from both the security standpoint and also from a standpoint of just downtown beautification and vitalization and excitement down there. So thank you. That's my comments.
No, Councillor.
Thank you, Your Worship. And just to comment on Councillor Chandler's, this is certainly not a rejection of the proposal at all. And it is certainly not a rejection of any densification. I was on that OCP committee, and I know that we asked for densification, and as well as this council has requested densification. The densification can continue to happen. It just, the project just has to be redesigned. What we're saying is we want a better project. We want a better design that is more fitting, that doesn't require variances to the setbacks and to the parking and so forth. If this property had in fact taken over maybe 3 lots, then this proposal would have been just fine. But the fact that they're restricted to the size of the lots type of thing is why they're encroaching onto where is the setback areas. So the thing is that we do want densification. The OCP asked for that, and so do we. But we want people downtown. We're just saying that the OCP requires that we do a better project, and that's all we're asking the developer. We're certainly not against the developer proposing this project. Everything else about it with the commercial and the solar and the bike racks and everything is really great ideas. But the thing is that we want to try and improve the downtown area. As the mayor has mentioned, anyways, of many of our stores and so forth are 0 lot line to the front, and that's the standard that was back in the day. But the thing is that we've moved past that now. And so to the mayor's question about 0 lot lines are everywhere, and sticking to the densification in the OCP. I have the OCP right here, and it actually in Plan Parksville, the latest one, and it says right on it for the frontage is to encourage setback to the frontage for public seating and landscaping, and is even a picture. And it even shows the pictures of the Parksville trees that, form part of the landscaping, which is great. But the thing is that it's showing a setback of the building back from the sidewalk. And that's where you get that landscape. That's what softens the features of it. It makes it more walkable downtown. It makes it more favorable to walk in the area that has landscaping. It's proven it's going to be better for the storekeepers. It's going to be better for the people that live up in those apartments. It's a better place to live because of it. And that's why it's in the OCP. So it's not too much to ask. It's just redesign the building and so come up with the features that Parksville deserves. We're requesting a better building. We're not rejecting the building. We're just requesting a better building that it really should go back to the ADP for their comments because they're way more experts than any of us here. So the thing is that you utilize that free information service that the ADP offers. But and that's why I'm all for development. But the thing is that we can and should expect better.
You're okay? We are rejecting this project if you vote against it today. There's no two ways about it. It's being rejected and it's being turned down and it goes back to square one to start all over again. We have two choices here. We either can approve it and let it go to the next level and allow the public their input. And then at that point in time, they will come, hopefully the developer will come back with a redesign. If not, at that point in time, you turn it down. Or we can defer this until Councillor Greer gets back and we'll have the whole council, because that's what we always have said we do is when it's a major decision, we wait until the whole of council is here. So, it's either or on this one. I happen to think that why waste the 2 weeks till the next meeting? Why don't we approve this one and allow it to go to the public for input and then let the developer take the information that the public has provided? And yes, there are things about the sidewalk and the landscaping, but to say it softens it, that's grasping at straws in my mind. The whole of the downtown and this street, other than the city hall, is right up against the sidewalk for the vast majority of it. If you look at it, we're in a downtown core. We're not in a subdivision. We're not in those other areas. We're here for densification of property. We're going to 4 stories. We're going to add, however many, I can't remember off the top of my head how many units it was there that we're going to. This is a good project and it's something that this corner needs. And you're right. You want to go to pick up an extra lot? That's an easy problem. We go to 6 and 7 stories or 8 stories high to justify the additional costs of the land. And we make this problem go away completely. There probably wouldn't be any variations asked for if that were the case. Things can be solved by going up, but we're not, I don't think the residents are prepared to go that high at this point in time. 4 and 5 stories is what the OCP did say. And if you read it and it says, and it doesn't say thou shalt do these things. It says it's recommended, it's suggested, the OCP is meant to add to the conversation, not to be hard and fast on this. I believe that this can be worked out, but I don't see us slowing this thing down until and turning it down at this point, because at that point we're rejecting it. We are rejecting it, and we can dance with that all day long, but it's a rejection and it goes back to square one. If we do what I'm suggesting and what Councillor Fraz has suggested, is that we send it on to input, let the community tell us what they feel. And it doesn't matter that there's nobody living in the neighborhood. This is a city, this is a downtown core thing. This is for the whole city to file their concerns with, not just the exact neighbors. So, I think that the people deserve to have the right to have this conversation before we turn it down. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I don't want the project to fail. I don't think any of us here in the room want to nix this project. That's not the issue. But it does delay it if we just put it through to public input. I think it could go. I think really the best place for this project to go, and I would make a motion to that, but I'm not sure how that would work with the recommendation on the table. I would make a motion that this go back first to the ADP. The architect has heard the concerns we have, and I think that that would save time as well. The public isn't well versed on some of the issues, the problems here. So I think that would be a reasonable place for it to go first. We're not nixing the project in any way, and I'm not trying to. So I'd like to find a way around it so that we can keep it going, but I do think it needs a revisit first. So I would make that motion if I can, but I'm not sure how that would work.
Let's get through. You can't have two motions on the floor at the same time. So if this one gets defeated, then you can hold on for a second. I did listen to the whole meeting with the advisory board. And quite honestly, other than landscaping, pitched roof, and they were more interested in and spent a good portion of the time talking about the drainage in the parking lot and how the one architect did a bigger project in Qualicum Beach rather than what the size. They had no complaints about the building itself. They had no complaints about it being up on other than the landscaping strip, which is, and you know, the compromise from the developer is he moved the doorways back and is putting planters in there and benches in there so that it's not that solid wall that we see across the street at Simmons. You're going in and out, and it's causing some, and yes, it is incorporating the trees of the city of Parksville. That's what they're there for. But you know, the whole thing is they did as much as they could with this project. I don't see it going back to them because it's going to come back with the same situation again coming forward. They came to us. They have the option to come to us. They came to us. Let's make the decision. Either we're going to approve it or we're going to decline it. If we decline it, you are rejecting it and you're sending it back to restart this. If you approve it and let it go forward to the public and let the public have their input, that to me is what we've been accused of all along, because we couldn't, because of COVID, have these meetings. Let's have this one. We can have it now. And let's do it. Let's do what we said we would do when we could. Councillor Fraz.
Just wanted to comment on Councillor Wilson's desire there about it going to the ADP. If, you know, there is still the opportunity for it to go to the ADP after there gets public input in as well. But what we can't do is bring it back from the dead if it gets rejected at this point. The way that this project stands right now, I wouldn't approve it if this was our final stage of it. It wouldn't have my support of it going through. That's not what I'm giving my support to for today. It's that, you know, we have the opportunity for the developers to come back to us, and I really do believe from what I saw them today that they're listening and going to make those changes. When we looked at Parksville being one of the top communities in BC for a couple of years in a row, the resiliency of the communities, they say one of the biggest factors is the housing starts in it as well. Across Canada, housing affordability and so on. So when I seen a developer come in with some great units, like the things that we've been asking for from developers all the time, 2 bedrooms, 1 bedroom and den and so on. Here's a developer that seems to be like they're willing to work with us just because they didn't get it right on their first try. You know, as I said before, because they didn't get a hole-in-one on it, I don't think we should send the message that unless you get it bang on, we're going to tell you to scrap it, you know, and start over. I'd like to work with them and make those improvements. So again, it's for those reasons I'll give my support. But if there was no changes coming back, I wouldn't be so inclined to support it.
Last call. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Perhaps this is for Sorry. Yeah. Okay. So it's for a director of planning through you, your worship. So it says that staff be directed to provide the required notice of council's intent to consider issuance of a development permit to the owner. So the council defer consideration until, that would be number 3. So I guess I just want to be really clear. If we send it out to the public, I'm just trying to find that place where it is on here, because I'm not seeing it right now. I just see that there are 3 recommendations.
I believe you're referring to the number 3, that council defer consideration of the development permit until final consideration of the development
Right.
variance
Okay.
permit.
So I guess what I'm saying is that where is the part on here that it says it go out for public?
That's on number 2.
Okay. All right. Public notice.
Look for the second line.
Right. Okay. I'm just trying to, I'm not trying to nix the project. I hear everyone. I'm just concerned that nothing will move. It'll just come back and there'll be more pressure on us to approve the variance, and I don't approve the variances. So that's my issue right now. And it leads one to believe that we're considering issue of a development variance permit, and I'm not considering that right now. That's just where I'm standing on it. I don't think that's not what I want. I don't mind it going to the public, but I don't want that part that says council's intent to consider issuance of a development variance permit, because that makes us once again feel locked into this.
Well, that's what the notice is indicating, your intent to make a decision. That's what the notice is. That's what we're just seeking authorization to go ahead with the notice. And that notice is informing the public that when it comes back, that you'll be making a decision at that time, whether or not you'll issue the development variance permit.
Councillor Chandler and then Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, your worship. Through you to Councillor Wilson, I was just going to suggest you were looking at maybe making some sort of a motion earlier on. Maybe perhaps you could make a motion that some of our concerns are sent to the developer right away, and also if that's available, and then also if we could have you say that it has to go back to the ADP for the second time around on that same motion, just to maybe an olive branch to make sure it goes a little bit easier and also sort of helps your concerns. That would be just a suggestion. Not sure if all of that is appropriate or not.
Can't have 2 motions at the same time. Okay, so I have to deal with this one first. And I believe, I'd be willing to bet that the developer is hearing this loud and clear right at this very moment. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, your worship. I guess I'm going to start with the fact that developers do tend to change some of their design based on what council has said in meetings. We have some really good projects that have come, that have finished their construction based on council's recommendations. And I'm hoping that, and the public, we've also had some projects that have ceased to continue based on public input. I could mention the Beach Motel, and that's a strong indication of the public's non-support of the original design. Unfortunately, I've seen 5 different designs for that piece of property, and some of them were really good. That didn't happen. I do believe that there are definitely some considerations that need to be addressed in this development And like Councillor O'Brien has said, if they had three lots instead of the two, we wouldn't be seeing nearly the variance requests, I'm sure. But I am a strong believer in the public's ability to weigh in, and we were elected by the public to voice their concerns. And I really do believe that it needs to go to the public and then move forward in whatever fashion that will be.
Okay. Thank you. Any further comments? Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through to Mr. Russell. Would it be correct in saying, I know the developer is listening right now, they're hearing our concerns and so forth. If we rejected this today, would it not be in normal fashion for the developer, since they've already got so much skin in the game now, that they would go back, do some revisions and say they'd like to resubmit a revised proposal? Would that not be pretty well commonplace? I've seen it happen on other developments, watching council meetings in the past, where the developer or the architect has reworked it after hearing the comments from council. What I echo what Councillor Patterson has said about other developments that went south because of the public comments. But at that particular time, and the one that Councillor Patterson, I was always so disappointed that the developer themselves did not actually have council comments. They just withdrew on the mere fact that they were by public comments, they rejected it and went a different direction, then and threw that one down the toilet. So the thing is that council never ever did weigh in the formula as we hear as to what our comments or suggestions would have been on that project. And that project went south, and I'm really disappointed it did, because I think with some work it could have been better. So that's what I'm suggesting now, that the architect and the developer are listening to our comments now, and maybe it's a simple tweak, and maybe they can compromise, or maybe they can do something. But would they not come back in a normal situation after hearing conversations like this? That's basically, is that how it happens usually, or what's the process after this?
If I may, Your Worship, through to Councillor O'Brien, if you reject it, so if you actually deny the development variance permit, then they would have to make a new application for a development variance permit. That's a very specific thing to reject it, right? There are other things though that aren't as extreme as that. So for example, and again, council in the form of a resolution, I think would have to be very specific. So if council wanted, I don't know, a large triangle, I'm just going to make something up really ridiculous, but a large triangle on the top of the building, then it would need to articulate that clearly to the developer, so that when they're able to make those revisions, so that when it comes back for consideration of both the variance permit and the development permit, that they're able to deliver what the issue is. So I think clear articulation of that. Sorry, it looks like the CAO would like to.
Sorry, if I may, Your Worship, I was just going to maybe add a little bit of a caution to that. I fully agree with what the director is saying, but if council doesn't have the benefit of public input, they might be making some suggestions on certain elements, but there may be additional things then that come from the public discussion that maybe council doesn't know today, or maybe council thinks it's a great idea, but everyone in the public doesn't agree. And so in some respects, taking it forward for the public notice, we could defer the public notice by several weeks to allow the developer to perhaps suggest some changes or make some changes. But I think my only concern would be that if council lays out a specific list of items that you know of today, then they could go in good faith, make changes, and then there's additional items that either conflict or provide some challenges. So if we go to the public notice period as is, with the information from both the ADP, from council's discussion today, it kind of gives a bit of a pause for the public to weigh in and agree or disagree or add additional thoughts. And then council could pass a resolution at a later meeting based on all of that input and your own opinions, that's a more complete list of revisions or items that you might want to see. I think that would just be my only caution, is that we can't possibly know all of the concerns that might be out there.
I think the other part of that is that when you look at it, the developer goes back and instructs the architect to start to make some of the changes that we're recommending here. And then we come back and say, yeah, that's great. Then we goes to the public, and the public says, no, we want all of this change. I mean, you're sending the guy back to the table 2 and 3 times. And this is not a cheap proposition to have an architect and engineers go back and redesign these buildings every time on a whim. What we need to do is put it all together and come back with one package that the developer and the architect know what they're dealing with and for, to get the approval that they're after. You know, the same thing goes with, you know, we're talking about, like, we're asking the world to be turned upside down on variations and on the permit application. The reality is that the number of variations that are being asked for are not that large, and it's not that significant when you look at other projects that we've approved. We did it down on Wall Street for how many parking spaces down there? You know, 0 lot lines. Yep, we've done that. Narrowed the landscaping setbacks. Yep, we've done that. All of these things have been done on 1 or more projects at a time. So it's not like we're asking to change the world on this. We're not asking for all these things. And, you know, it becomes down to our personal preferences, which is not what we're here for. Somebody mentioned here earlier, I think it was Councillor Patterson, because she always brings this kind of good stuff up, that we're here representing the public and the people here. And we need to know what they want in this particular one. This is a very important corner in the city of Parksville. It's going to be a kitty corner from the other big project that's going to be on the other side. We need to have input as to what we see and how we see it. And I think that it's important that we hear what the public has to say before we go any further. And yes, you know, rejecting it, as I said earlier several times, we're going back to square one on this one. And that there's a significant cost to that, even just based on that part. So anyways, we've gone around in circles on this. Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship. And just maybe if I can make a suggestion to try and, if we approve this, could we add in exactly that I know it says the required notice of council to provide notice, that means going to the public. Does it not, Mr. Russell? And could we also say, and referring back, let's include the general public as well as referral to the ADP as well as the public? Could we add that into that? Like approve it today and just send it back to the ADP for their comments as well as we're asking for the public's comments. And that way the architect, as you said, that way the architect understands, he'll know what council wants, he'll knows what the public wants, and he knows what the ADP wants. Does that work?
Sure, it works, but now you've added another step into the process.
Well, only the ADP. Yeah.
But what we're saying is let's let the public tell us what they want. That's who it is. It's not the architects and the ADP that are going to tell us what they want in their city. It should be the people and this council that tell us. And you know, it meets. I mean, what's the actual terms of reference for the ADP? It's for form and character. That's it. Thank you. It's not for a lot of the other stuff. All of that is inclusive in the OCP and in the zoning requirements. So I'm going to
just one point of clarification, I think, if I may, Your Worship. When the notice, if council decides to go to notice, when the notice has ended and the comments come in from the public, council could at that time refer it to the ADP. It may be after hearing from the public, it doesn't go anywhere. So I think that would be a good next step.
I'd agree with
if
that.
if you're progressing with the proposal.
All right. Yeah. we're being told, I'm being asked to call the question, so he has that right. We've each talked about it 5 times. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. The whole point of this that I was trying to get to was when I could make a motion for the ADP, and that's fine. If that's what we can do then. Thank you. That clarifies it all.
Okay. I'm being asked to call the question. I'm calling the question. All those in favor of point number 2 to be referred to the public. Okay. Unanimous. Thank you. Point number 3. I think it becomes a little redundant, but you move it for point number 3, seconded by Councillor Patterson. Discussion. I don't know how much more we can talk about it. So any comments? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Where's our Director of Engineering?
It's not me.
Oh, Blaine. Oh, still
Not me.
Blaine?
I'll be leaving soon.
I'm missing something now. Oh, sorry, here it is. It was stuck together. Go ahead.
If Mayor, Worship, and Council, for your consideration this afternoon is final consideration of a development variance permit to facilitate the conversion of a detached garage into an accessory carriage house at 564 South Avenue. This is an existing building. The difference is we have different setbacks for carriage houses versus accessory buildings. Required notice has now occurred to adjacent properties. As of today, we've received no correspondence. If there's anyone in the gallery that has comment, they should be provided an opportunity to make comment on it. I don't believe anyone's in the gallery, but if they are, they should probably raise a hand. And then the rest is per the agenda to consideration issuance of the development variance permit.
I need a mover and a seconder for the recommendations. Moved by Councillor Raz. We'll go with Councillor Wilson. Discussion. Councillor Raz.
Yeah, thank you. I think this is a great one to come forward here, just as regarding just housing affordability for families to be able to convert a detached garage like this. And it looks like the adjustments need to be made are less than, or they are 3 feet for the lot lines there from the back and 2 feet from the interior. So very minor, about an arm's length difference there. And again, to add to the housing affordability for families, I think this is a great one that deserves approval.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I totally agree. I think this is a wonderful idea. We need more of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Calling the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Now, thank you, Mr. Russell. Good job today. Yes, sir. We just got warmed up for you. Yeah. No, we're going. We got.
And ready to go?
Yes, anytime you are. I'm sorry. I was
Thank you,
waiting for
Worship, members of council, and thank you for the opportunity to introduce this follow-up report to you today. I prepared a couple slides for you that will show what it is we're hoping to accomplish if successful with this grant funding application. Recommendations are per the agenda, and I'm happy to answer any questions if I'm able. Next slide, please.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So what I have up here, it looks busy and you don't have to focus on the details. I certainly get lost in them. This is page 100 from the Stormwater Master Plan. It outlines 20 years worth of projects that support the 2017 Community Park Master Plan. And if you'll recall from last month's meeting, the total value of all this work is about $7.2 million. So that 300-page report kind of boils down to this one chart. Here's all the stuff you should do over the next 20 years. Next slide, please. What we're proposing now is to focus on the first 5 years of the Stormwater Master Plan as part of this grant application, which really pares it down from the ambitious application we're looking at to do last month. On the next slide, I'll home in on some of the projects we're hoping to complete as part of this project. Next slide, please. The rain gardens on both sides of the amphitheater would be designed to capture runoff from the hard surfaces created with the new construction. This project is estimated at $74,000 in the master plan. The amphitheater regrading, naturalization, and landscaping would see the lands fronting the new amphitheater improved to provide a viewing area, a berm, and pedestrian pathway. This project is estimated at roughly $232,000. The Ravenhill Road rock pit overflow would seek to improve drainage from storm events on Ravenhill Road, and this is estimated at $103,000. The Sandcastle Drive parking conversion to subsurface rock pits would see infiltration galleries installed along Sandcastle Drive that would capture and release stormwater into the ground. This is estimated at approximately $242,000. Now, the largest project in this group is the Nervous Lane outfall connection. And this would see a new storm trunk main installed along Nervous Lane and direct stormwater runoff to a stormwater treatment device at the outfall, which then drains into the estuary. And that's the basis of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I need a mover and a seconder to the recommendations. Councillor Chandler, Councillor O'Brien. Discussion? Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through to Sean Bowman. Thanks very much for your new proposal here, and thank you for listening to our concerns. So I appreciate the fact that and the other one was rather ambitious, and it scared us. And all that I can say is I appreciate you taking the extra time to come up with the projects that will fit our budget a little easier, but also be done on a priority basis. And I would also like to think that wherever Al Greer is listening or watching this right now, he's going to be very happy. So thank you for that, Mr. Bowman.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Councillor Press.
Thank you. Through the mayor to our director here. We have, just to recap, this was a follow-up from our previous meeting when we were talking about the grant application we're asking for, moving the project from 20 years to a 5-year phase. And at the time, we'd asked you to come back to give us a little snapshot of what's on the table there, because something's going to have to come off to accommodate this into our work plan as well, right? I just think that it's important to connect those conversations that we had at the previous meeting to this, because just a quick snapshot of looking at this, it looks great that we have a grant opportunity. Why would we jump on it? But it comes at a cost as well. So, you know, sorry I didn't catch it, but I thought it would have been important to break out these recommendations so we could receive the report and then debate those other ones individually. I don't know if it's too late to have done that, because now they're all moved. But I think there's some serious concerns with that as well. We have a plan that was already in place. While it stretches over 20 years, it accommodates the rest of what we have in our community plan for that time frame. And I think my question to you before was, what would have to give to if we were to move forward on this one? What would you be proposing that we remove from the work plan?
It was for you, sir.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Through to Councillor Fraz. That's something that I think I would have to work with the CAO on, because she's intimately familiar with everything that's on the table right now. And just applying for a grant doesn't mean getting a grant. We'd have to, I guess, figure that out if we were successful, like, okay, how are we going to juggle, or do we need additional resources, or what's going to come off the table? So I don't have that answer today, unfortunately.
If I may, Your Worship, through you to council, all of council, I think what I had asked staff to do in this one is link it to the other major projects that council has already approved. So you'll notice some works around where the outdoor stage is going. Nervous Lane is quite connected with the Rath Trevor Trail that we're trying to implement as well. So once we're fully staffed in engineering, which is our current challenge, and we have our work plan for the subsequent years, we're planning on bringing that the current list to council in February after the committee of the whole on the pool. And that will show that we are essentially already almost maxed out for this year. But I think what we've decided or worked together as a team is that we adjust as we need to, and council gives us the priorities of what projects it is they would like to see. And so we have accounted for some time in our work plan for engineering, but we've tried to make sure that whatever we're committing to achieving in the next 5 years are mostly things we would have to do anyway related to the other projects that are currently underway. So I think what we would have to do is see if we get the funding, and then we would look at sort of each year what comes off or goes on the list. And then there's also some other opportunities, of course, if we contract things out or push things back. So that's like an ongoing project that we basically do with council's input every budget cycle.
Well, just I guess a comment I make to that then too is I don't feel like really we have all the information then, because we don't know what it's really going to cost us at the end of if we make this decision here. Because while it's just making the application, we are committing to doing that. We're not going to make the application, get the money, and then say no. The only way we wouldn't go forward is if we got denied the application. Contrast that against, we already have a plan that's budgeted for on top of all the other projects that we already have plans for and that are budgeted for. So, you know, whenever you change positions, some gets given up along the way. So while we'll be getting a grant opportunity, we're giving something else out of the way, and we don't know what that cost is going to be yet. That's not a decision that I'm comfortable to make for it, because it's kind of jumping with your eyes closed, not knowing what we're going to be getting afterwards. So to me, there's just it's not clear enough right now for me to support it.
Thank you, Worship. If I may, I think one of the things that we're trying to do right now is council adopted the plan, which has a lot of recommended actions in there. And so what we're trying to do is see if we can get funding for those items. Council could decide if we didn't get the funding to not do them, but we've already got a adopted plan, I suppose, that has the items listed, which we would basically have to fund ourselves if we are to implement, and council does not have to implement those. That's every budget cycle. We take things from different plans, different master plans, and bring them forward as projects. So at the budget process, we won't know, I don't think, until the end of this year if this grant is successful. I'm just looking to the director. So chances are we would have a better sense of, you know, what would be on the work plan for 2023 or for the 5-year work plan towards the end of that year. But we would also be able to reject the funding if we wish, or pivot. But at some point, I think we need a decision from council if we're going to proceed with the recommended drainage works. And if we are, then we would have to pay for them ourselves or seek grant funding to do it, or not proceed if council didn't feel like they were priority projects.
Councillor Chandler.
Hey, thank you. Through the mayor, just a quick comment that I feel like there's a potential that we may see some other funding come through. As CAO has said, there could be some projects that we have to put on the back shelf at that point, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years from now. So I don't have a problem with moving forward on this for an approval, but you know, hopefully we'll see everything come together. I understand the concerns of Councillor Fraz as well, but I think that we've got a lot of projects on the go right now. I think we've been very successful in making those all work. So I would like to see that. I would like to see this all happen. Thank you.
Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to our director or CAO, I'm not sure. The deadline has been extended to February 23rd, 2022. The awarding will take place in the fall of 2022. Is that correct?
Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Patterson. There is no set award time, but typically in speaking with Deb Tardif, it can take up to a year to hear on these things these days. So we would expect either early next year or late this year.
Follow up, Your Worship.
Please.
That being said, some of the projects that tie in with this grant funding, I'm assuming will come up in some of our budget deliberations in the spring, and that. So I don't have any issue applying for the grant. I have some concerns with the deadline for it. With all grant applications, it's a great deal of work. involved. So I'm optimistic, or maybe I should ask that we have the staffing available and with the new plan in mind over the next 3 to 5 years.
It's kind of.
If I may, Your Worship, we do have direction from council to prioritize applications for grants where possible.
Yes.
And so, you know, we do kind of, I guess, redirect our staff time to make sure that we can meet the deadlines. Most of the time these days, once we have something like a master plan, it actually helps us prepare the grant applications, because we're kind of not halfway there, but we're a little bit way there in terms of what it would cost and what the priority is from a professional perspective. So I think we're confident, or we are confident, that we can get the application in. And I believe in my discussions, and I could be corrected if I'm wrong here, but most of the projects would be in the 2023 and beyond. So we don't anticipate that we would be doing any of these projects this year. We already do have a lot on the plate for this year. So I think we have sufficient time to come back to council, obviously, a number of different times, and look at the priorities and the linkages and what projects, you know, perhaps get adjusted out or contracted out or scope amended so that we can fit them in. But I think what I understand from discussing this with staff is that there are some significant drainage challenges, and this would be sort of a foundational approach, no pun intended, to deal with the underlying conditions so that some of the new investment that council has approved can actually happen. And, you know, we can use the spaces a little bit more effectively. As we've expressed a few times, we are a bit concerned about the wetness for folks who are going to be sitting at the theater. And then other areas that we experience a lot of really marshy areas, even in the heat dome, when it hadn't rained for a long time, over near the skate park and in some other areas. So yeah, I think the first part is to see if we can get funding. And then I think it would be a priority to move those projects forward and look at other areas that we could move out where we don't have the funding. But I think we have enough time in this budget cycle to put them in for the 5-year plan, and then adjust every year as we do usually with council. Like maybe council doesn't see it, but we take a ton of things off, you know, to keep the tax rate at a certain rate. And we move things out and adjust so that we can make that work kind of in the 20-year plan. And we would commit obviously to do that again and recognize that it would be a new term. So some councillors might have different priorities at that point, and we would adjust for that as well.
Thank you. I think, well, I know, I hear what Councillor Frass is saying is that we're making decisions on something that we're not 100% sure of yet. But I think on the other side of it is we won't know until we get there, until they say, yes, you've got 500 or whatever the amount is of the grant that they're giving to us. You've got that much money to do it. Then we can sit down, and that's when I would expect staff to come to us and say, here's the 47 projects that we have on our list. Here's what it all comes to. Here's the time that it takes. And it's probably not a lot different than when we were talking about how the workloads of each of our staff members that we had before. We have to sit down then and start making the hard decisions. But until we know that we've got the money or we don't have the money, you know, we're just kind of arguing or discussing issues that may or may not happen. I'd rather just go for it, apply for it. If we get the money, that's a nice problem to have. Then we can come back and say, you know what, we've got too much money in the kitty here, and it's going to take too much of our staffing time. So let's start pushing some of the other non-priority projects out a little bit further at that time. But I think it's important that we go after a sum of this size if we can, and take advantage of whatever dollars we can get from the senior levels of government. God knows we pay them enough money. So anyways, no other comments. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor, 1, 2, and 3. Opposed? Would take note that Councillor Frass has made a vote in the negative. Thank you. Ms. Weeks. Thank you. Thank you very much. Holy cow.
Thank you. So last spring, council issued a license of occupation to the chamber for the food trucks in the Parksville Community Park. The license includes an option for renewal with the current holder for the 2022 season. And the chamber has requested a renewal for this season. And the recommendation to renew the license is per the council agenda.
I need a mover and a seconder for moved by Councillor Wilson, second by Councillor Chandler. Discussion? Councillor Fraz?
Just want to make a comment here that I appreciate the provision here, the cleanliness here, being responsible for the cleanup, because I
Yes,
know
thank you.
over years past, there's often quite a bunch of litter, or just, having the garbage cans without the covers on it, and then the birds get in there and pulls it apart. So I'd like to see them, they're going to be responsible for cleanup within 30-meter radius. I think that's a great portion of it there.
Thank you. All right. Councillor O'Brien?
Thank you, Your Worship. And also you've included anyways, and under number 4 anyways, a provision as if good weather permitting and nothing else in the way to actually go through September as well, which I appreciate anyway, so we don't have to like re-meet again just to extend it. It's already built into this. So well done. Good job. Thanks.
Thank you. Going to call the question. All those, Councillor Chandler, call the question. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. I'm going to ask for a 5-minute recess if you don't mind. Hey. It was getting serious. That's why I held on to the last second. Is this next one yours as well? All right. We'll forgive you. All right, if we're ready, let's continue on. All right. Please.
Thank you. So this report seeks council approval to enter into a cost share agreement with the school district for the school trustee portion of the 2022 local government election. This requires the school district to pay 1/3 of the election costs to compensate the city for the handling of ballots, facilities, and staff costs incurred for both the advanced voting and on general voting day, and the recommendations per the council agenda.
I need a mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Counselor Wilson, second by Counselor Patterson. Is there any discussion on this? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Nice job. Mr. Russell, you're back. Oh, he doesn't want to do his, he doesn't want Scott on here to please present. Yep. All right, so we're, oh, you caught me off guard because I didn't even pay any attention to it at the beginning. I need a mover and a seconder for the recommendation that the zoning and development bylaw 2021 number 2000.132 be read a first and second time. And point number 2 is that the zoning and development bylaw 2021 number 2000.132 be advanced to a public hearing on March the 7th, 2022, starting at 1 p.m. in the forum at the Parksville Civic and Technology Center located at 100 Jensen Avenue East in Parksville. So I need a mover and a seconder for that. Moved by Councillor Patterson, second by Councillor O'Brien. Any discussion on this? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Next one is mine. Motion from previous meetings, and my motion was that the Monday, April the 4th regular meeting of council be rescheduled to Monday, April the 11th, 2022, and that the Monday, October the 17th regular meeting of council be canceled. I need a seconder for that. Councillor Chandler. Any discussion on this? We know why we're doing this. So Councillor Chandler.
Sorry, through the mayor, could you just refresh me on the April 4th one? I apologize.
April 4th is when we get back from,
Oh, right, okay.
yeah, the ABICC.
Okay,
Okay,
thank
so we're
you.
just back for one day. And
Right, gotcha. Thanks.
Okay, so we're moving it for a week. All right, call the question. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Do we have any notice of motions from council? Okay, new business. Do we have any new business from members of council? Holy cow. Just a reminder, we have a committee of the whole meeting scheduled for Wednesday, February 16th at 1 p.m. And our next regular council meeting will be held on Monday, February the 7th at 1 p.m. I need a mover and a seconder to move into a closed meeting pursuant to section 91E of the community charter. Council to proceed to a closed meeting to consider an item relating to acquisition, disposition, and expropriation of land. I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor O'Brien, second by Councillor Chandler. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Since we had our break.